Let's war world and Atlas thug. We here to bring the truth. Jar open this podcast. We breaking through the fake news. They try to silence us, but we will be subdued. We're bearded alpha males here to save the youth. Spitting fire on the mic with the bass Christian takes. Exposing the lies, keeping the demons at bay. We ain't afraid to speak up. We won't be swayed. Jar open this podcast where the truth is laid. Jar openers, cracking open the lies. We're rolling Atlas thug. We're here to rise. Bearded alpha males saving the youth from the godless demons, spreading the truth. We ain't playing games, we're on a mission to awaken the masses with our intuition. Pulling out the corruption with no inhibition. Jar open this podcast, sparking a revolution. We're not afraid to stand tall in a world full of deceit. We're the voice of reason, bringing light to the street. Keeping it real, never missing a beat. Jar open this podcast where the truth meets the heat. Jar openers, cracking open the lies. We're rolling Atlas thug, we're here to rise. Bearded alpha males saving the youth from the godless demons, spreading the truth. Jar open this podcast where the truth will never cease. Join us on the journey to bring back peace. We're rolling Atlas thug, fearless in our release. Jar open this podcast where the lies will decrease.
What is good?
Yo, yo, yo. I muted my mic and I didn't need to this time. How's everybody doing? How's everybody doing? Jar Openers Podcast, episode 70. Hope everybody's having a good weekend. This last week flew by for me. I don't know about you, but I can't believe it's halfway through April already. That's pretty crazy.
I know. Well, I can feel it, though. My allergies have been picking up. Change of seasons is killing me.
Yeah, I've been actually taking a daily allergy med myself. What's up, JB? Just me, TNT. Good to see you. What's up, Jamie?
Yeah, if anybody in chat has issues hearing me, let me know. I'm changing the distance of which I'm speaking into my microphone. So let me know if it sounds okay throughout the episode.
You sound all right from my perspective, but
Good.
We'll let the chat let us know what they think. Streaming back on X tonight. We are not streaming to America First TV this evening. Decided to go ahead on YouTube, solely stream to the Jar Openers Podcast channel as we were trying to launch and kick that channel off. And so we made it easy on the algorithm tonight, and it can just send people straight to the one show. Let's see.
More gay today.
You sound fine, but you look okay.
It's funny.
JB, that's funny, man.
That's awesome. What do I have to do to be less gay, Joe? I strive to be as straight as possible.
That's funny. That's funny. See a lot of folks over on X. How y'all doing? Hope everybody's having a good weekend. As the show goes on, make sure you're sharing, reposting, liking, follow. I'll follow most people back as long as your account's not just a bunch of nonsense. All that good stuff. Also over on YouTube, Rumble, make sure to hit the like button, share, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff.
Right.
We're going to get into...
Jamie. Says she lost her last remaining grandparent last night. Yeah.
Dang,
Jamie. For that. I know you've been losing I think it's like the second or third person I think you've lost recently. Yeah,
well, she lost both of her parents this last year, so that's sorry to hear that, Jamie. Been a quite the roller coaster for you this last year, but you know, we're always available on Discord if you need to chat. We have a nice little community around here. What's up, Evil Elmo? And speaking of which, we do have a Discord community. The link is in the description if anybody's interested. If you're a Discorder, is that a word? I don't know. If you're a person that uses Discord, make sure to click that link and we'll keep these conversations going. We have a Christian section. We have show suggestions. We even have a place where people have the opportunity to make an appearance on the show. So make sure you're plugged into all that.
Yep.
Your sister told you this morning? Dang. That's crazy.
Especially when it happens all at once.
Yeah, for sure. But let's see. But yeah, I was going to ask all the folks over on X at some point during the show, if you don't mind, maybe pulling up the old YouTube app and looking up the Jar Openers podcast channel and giving a little bit of support, hitting the subscribe button, all that good stuff. We're trying to build it up from scratch, and it's been live for about 2 weeks now. And so we're just trying to go through the normal avenues of being monetized over on YouTube, and it's a good way for folks to give away Google's money to a couple dudes that are, trying to fight the power, fighting the establishment, right? Fighting the deep state. What other ones can we use? Now, you know what I mean. Just
Fight
trying
the
to
Matrix.
make a positive difference here in the culture, the political and cultural world and stuff like that. Have a good time while we do it.
Yeah.
So tonight we're going to get into, kind of the main two things of the last 2 days, which is Tim Pool's hot take on the Carmelo Anthony story. A lot of people are responding, reacting to that. And then the Dave Smith Douglas Murray debate that happened on the Joe Rogan podcast. And then thirdly, Bill Maher went to the White House this week. He is a Trump derangement syndrome sufferer. I don't think he has the prescription, but maybe his doctor visit to the White House this week will change his opinion a little bit, and he can start getting over that Trump derangement syndrome. I kind of doubt it, honestly. The dude is, he's got his place sewn out in the political sphere, and dude his age, I don't think is going to benefit much from changing his opinion. You know what I mean? I think it's just going to be a negative for his audience, and he's not going to win anybody over from the right. It kind of reminds me of the whole Cenk Uygur thing that he tried to pull off at the beginning of the year, where he went round for round on all the round after round on all the MAGA channels and tried to act like we're all the same, and it fell on deaf ears when it came to the right. For the most part, there was some people at first that were going, "Oh man, Cenk's coming around," but it only took a couple days for the rest. Most people caught on right away, but it took a couple days, and everybody else had caught on. And so Bill Maher's not fooling anybody, and I don't think he really even is. But still, he did give what seemed like a well thought out. He didn't rush to tell the story. Rather respectful response to how he was treated in the White House by Donald Trump and Kid Rock, and I think Dana White was even there. So that would definitely have been a fun lunch to attend. I wish they would have recorded more of it. I haven't seen a whole lot, but Kid Rock's outfit was pretty awesome. They tried to compare it to Zelensky wearing a sweatsuit to the White House, but to me, I think what Kid Rock was wearing is actually more of a fancy suit than a fancy suit. Kind of, it's like next level, and I don't know. I think it's funny knowing some of Kid Rock's old songs talking about getting high with kings and sleeping in dumpsters and the whole gambit of what he's been on, and then now here he is. He's just hosting dinners with Bill Maher and and Dana White with Donald Trump in the White House wearing the freaking crazy outfit that a lot of people reminded me of, like what Evel Knievel would wear or something like that.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, Daredevil outfit. Yeah.
I see JB making fun of my Mach-E. It's my wife's. Look, I got my wedding ring on today. Proof of wife, almost. Is as close as I can provide right now.
One like equals one proof of wife.
No, but I love it, JB. Keep it coming. I can laugh at myself, that's for sure. Evil Alma mentions that the Bill Maher thing is odd. I think if it got 3 of his fans to think and look for themselves instead of listening to MSM, it's a good thing. Yeah, it is. I think it is. Sitting down with somebody and having a conversation is way more healthy than just judging somebody by what you've seen reported through the mainstream media. I think Bill Maher believed the Very Fine People hoax, and I can't remember. I'm going off of memory, but I'm pretty sure Bill Maher quoted the Very Fine People quote as factual, fell for the hoax until Snopes came out 7 years later, just recently, and finally admitted that Trump was not referring to the bad people from World War II when he said there's good people on both sides. But,
Yep.
yeah, TNT Bill did seem humbled. He seemed rather humbled, but he's still got a pretty big ego, and I don't think it's gonna. I mean, it scored some points for Trump, and I don't know. We'll see. Maybe this is just the beginning, and next thing you know, Bill Maher's out here fully supporting Donald Trump. Well, hope so. I don't think so. But
Yeah. I don't know. I think Bill's not a very trustworthy person. I put him in the same class as like Lindy Lee, um, Ian Miles Strong. I mean, I think it's ultimately writings on the wall. If you want to make more money, you can't be talking trash about Trump. Going to lose your audience. You're going to stand out of touch. I think for me, it's like another one of these kind of just constructs. I think just Bill's kind of orchestrating a public appearance so then he can kind of pivot for his next couple of months of content and be like less anti-Trump. That way he can kind of again continue his production for his show on a bend that's not going to be so open to being targeted for things like that. Um, I don't like Bill very much at all as a human being, even.
I agree.
Also on top of like what is obviously what he does with the show too. I think he's just kind of like a very nasty individual. But I mean, yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you look at it, it's another one of those like net positive things, right? So if somebody does listen to Bill Maher and for whatever reason on God's green earth, they take their politics from Bill Maher and they decide they see this bit of Trump stuff and it causes them maybe to decouple themselves from their probable Trump derangement syndrome. It'll be good in the long run, but ultimately, I don't have a high opinion of Bill, and I think he's money motivated more than anything. I think that
Yeah,
was pretty
that's
much proven with like the Jack Posobiec incident, where he turned out like I can't remember what the specific story was, but he sounded like a complete idiot because he didn't know anything about the story. He was basically just reading off of what his note cards were from his production assistant.
right.
And then when Jack was like, "Bro, what are you talking about?" He got really angry, and I think he was angry not because he was wrong about the story, but because it made him look like an idiot,
Right, and
you
he didn't
know?
have anything else written on his cue cards to get him out of it. They
Right,
put him in a bad situation, his writers or whoever it is, and I'm right there with you too. I think that Bill Maher is pretty much just in it for the money, and especially since he's come back on this like second round or whatever it is. Um,
right,
his writers are writing his opinions for him. He's just kind of sitting there um, to make the money because he can. You know what I mean? And
right.
um, part of the shtick is something that has worked for him and didn't work for a lot of other people. Is this Trump derangement syndrome? And like Evil Elmo mentions here, is that his disbelief in God and the way that he talks about religion with like Jordan Peterson and stuff like that.
Right.
I think is
Jordan Peterson's also fake too.
yeah, which yeah, I mean, uh, I feel like everybody kind of has their place and their people that hear them when they speak. But Jordan Peterson doesn't speak to me a whole lot. Just not
Right,
super relatable to me. And so to each their
right.
own. If you like Jordan Peterson, but for me, he's I usually pass.
Well, his fall from grace has been pretty astute. I wish you could really kind of track it, to be honest with you. I think he did do a lot of good, in like the 2016 to 2018 period when he opened up with, clean your room and some of his opening messages. But
Yeah,
I mean, like what? Like I he had a recent Piers Morgan appearance, and he's weeping,
it's the second.
talking about this, and it's like he's like not maybe it's hard to describe really, but as an actual example to emulate for men, it's like he's not that. It's like don't be Jordan Peterson who can't go and make public appearances without weeping, and then
Right.
also be like the same guy who's appeals to authority and on moral foundations is actually like goes no farther than what like Pascal's wager is, which is basically like, well, there's some really good, lessons in the Bible, and I guess if it's true, I mean, you might as well follow it. It's better to follow it than not follow it, and doing all these kind of like reductionist views of like the gospel. That's like, and that really bothered me when he went on with Bill Maher and did that too, because they're talking about the Bible as if it's like this. It's just like this lesson. It's like this nice big lesson book you can learn from. But, obviously, I think even in that clip, Bill Maher let it known, like, just how deeply he hates religion, but specifically, like, how deeply he hates just Christianity as a religion.
Right.
he left pretty much the rest of them off the list. And it's just like, and again, this is kind of like that same liberal degen like garbage I hate about the current political sphere. He's having like the hawk to a girl on there, and like he's like, buddy with her. And like that's just weird to me, right? It's just weird that you have like, what is he now, like 50, 60 years old, talking about like and pushing Haley Welch to start a sex podcast, who was, I think Bailey had turned like 18 or 19 at the time. And so again, it's like, it's weird, but it's very indicative on the broad scale of how a lot of our institutions in Hollywood and mainstream media is like pushing for all these these liberal degen ideas. Like, yeah,
Right.
Haley, you got viral off of going hawk Tua. Don't you think you should make an OnlyFans page and like you should profitize off of that? You should capitalize on that and make a sex podcast. And it's like, really? You're a 50-year-old dude pushing someone else's daughter to like go do pornographic stunts for money? Like, that's where we are in the culture. And then people listen to this guy as if he's some kind of moral authority on anything. It's like, miss me with that, dude. It's like, I can't stand that kind of stuff.
Right. Still holding a Bitcoin you got from her. Eventually it'll go up again, right? You blammo.
I'm still shocked that she's not getting charges for that, or at least not getting any kind of like, a guilt by association charge for signing off on a lot of paperwork and documents that she clearly didn't read.
Right. The
Only
meme
to like
coin.
yank money on people.
Right. Yeah. Rugging a project is never good. And that's why you got to do your due diligence when it comes to all these crypto and NFTs and all that type of stuff like that. But back to like, just Jordan Peterson real quick. I think the last 2 times he was on Piers Morgan, he started crying. He was on there just a few days ago as well. And I listened to the first 10, 15 minutes, and he didn't cry in the first 10 or 15 minutes that I can recall, but I believe the thumbnail was him crying. And it's just like, man,
Yeah.
I root for you, but I just, you know what I mean? Like, I wish him the best, but I just he doesn't motivate me the way that, I mean, he's never really struck a chord with me, even in the beginning, but I did like his message, clean up your room. I still believe that is a valid factor when it comes to our society and our government and our culture and everything like that. It's part of the America First agenda way of thinking, in my opinion, or at least from where I'm coming from. We can't prevent people from coming into our own country and reaping benefits and, capitalizing on working around our system, for their own benefit. How can we realistically look to support Ukraine in a war, or Israel in a war, or, any of these other scenarios where we're just pouring tens of millions of dollars, billions of dollars into these projects, this aid, essentially, when we don't have our own room clean yet. If our borders locked down, we get a lot of these folks that came in over the last 4 years deported, which has been completely derailed by the Supreme Court, by the way. Amy Coney Barrett just completely screwed all of us who voted for Trump's mandate, that mandated Trump to mass deport people, because now, according to SCOTUS, every person facing deportation gets their day in court, essentially, which makes it virtually impossible to run what some people think are as many as 40 million people who have came into our country illegally over the last 4 years. Numbers anywhere from 8 million to 40 million, we'll say. The realistic, possibility of getting these people their day in court and deported. Trump won't be able to match, Biden, or I meant to say Obama, which, they were turning people away at the border, counting those as deportations. I get that. But hell, he might not be able to match Biden now. I mean, it's just so much red tape, and it's super unfortunate that SCOTUS did that. And the weird thing is, just pertaining to that story quickly, is that the right called it a win for Trump. And I couldn't understand, he can deport people, he can continue, but everybody gets a day in court. That's not the win that we were looking for. And ironically, it was the Supreme Court justice that Trump appointed who fucked us. So, damn, you know what I mean? It's too bad that when a president appoints a Supreme Court justice, that same president within their 8 years can't remove that Supreme Court justice.
Well, I mean, at the same time, it's like no part of me is surprised that the lady who adopted multiple Africans is going to be the one who's going to have a much more ease on stance when it comes to deportations and immigration and such. It's like I could have told you, I could have seen that coming, and I'm pretty sure it was like now we're getting like decisions that are running down like the gender lines. Like the previous one they ruled on was like all the men versus all the women. It was like a 5-4 decision, and I can't remember what specific one it was, but that 5-4 decision was all the men versus all the women. Now, what do you do then, right? Like, what are we going to do if we're going to see like issues down the gender line? But again, Amy Coney Barrett was a disaster. I mean, even when she was initially chosen, she was a disaster. I'm struggling to remember who the other person was up, who he was between, but it was a male, and I cannot remember what his name is now at this point.
Oh, well, I think it was the guy that he appointed after her. What's the guy that he appointed? A couple of them. Who's the guy that he appointed for after?
Kavanaugh was first.
Oh, Kavanaugh was first, and then it was her. So did he? Maybe he appointed 2, or was it 3?
It was I'm forgetting the timeline now, but ultimately it ended up being that Ketanji Brown Jackson fell under Biden.
Biden, yeah.
And so that was like she's like the newest installment into the Supreme Court.
Couldn't define what
like
a woman is.
The American
Still got
system.
confirmed.
Yeah, absolute disgrace to the American system, dude. I mean, we have a literal Supreme Court justice on deciding at the highest level, and she wouldn't say what a woman was. She wouldn't even say what the biological definition of a woman was when asked.
Right.
Like that is, I mean, like if anything, it's like she should have gotten impeached at some point, like months ago, years ago. Should have been one of the first things Trump did, find a way to get that that Supreme Court justice out. But obviously, there's you can't. It's like the hard position to remove somebody from. But I was gonna go in even in a different direction too. Like, obviously, we're not going to get the deportations. I think that I've been kind of on the coat of that tail for some time. I've just a lot of things to speaking towards that, and I think we're just not going to get it. Period at all. Trump even posted a clip from Hillary Clinton about how all the immigrants who like and agreeing with Hillary Clinton too on Truth Social, agreeing, and it was about if the immigrants are here and they're not criminals, like we should kind of like let them stay, but we'll deport the criminal alien ones. And it's like this is going back to like what logic we were getting from like the left, but it's like they're all criminals. Like if they came here illegally, they are by definition criminal. Like they broke into the country and weren't supposed to be here in the first place, so they're all criminal. But they're resorting now to like now we're only going to focus on the violent ones, and so there's another promise that we're not getting. But the other one too that blew me away that no one seems to be even halfway bit of concerned about is that Doge changed their initial goal of it was like $1 trillion in fraud was like what they were seeking out to eliminate. They changed it to 150 billion, and at the same time Pete Hegseth came out and said we're going to up the defense budget to $1 trillion. And again, all of this rides on the coattails of what was that huge, massive debate about on Joe Rogan that's been taking the whole entire news cycle by storm, is because everyone and their brother, and this is like 3 straight days on Piers Morgan now, people are concerned that we are going to go to war with Iran, and people are not grasping just what kind of scale of invasion will be required to actually establish dominance over Iran. And Scott Horton like nailed one out of the ballpark. He was
I heard that
against Ben Ferguson, and I can't remember what the other girl's name was, but he's kind of like going into detail about Iran is a whole different story because we cannot establish air dominance over Iran until we actually have like a land invasion on the ground to take out these specific systems. And forgive me because I'm not a complete military expert, but he basically like lines it out that like you would need a D-Day style invasion on the ground against Iran to be able to then get it to the point where you could have an air dominance battle with like actually striking things. And so
it was I think he actually said bigger than D-Day invasion. And is to basically sorry to cut you off, but it was to basically in order to have an air fight, a battle in the air, we have to have basically I don't know what it is, maybe radar points or something like that in place, put there essentially by human hands. And so the fact that Iran's not going to do anything like that for us requires a huge amount of manpower, which is something that nobody that voted for Donald Trump is willing to get behind. And if they are, that's them changing their principal position from when they voted for Donald Trump in the first place. You're a Lindsey Graham type if you are.
Right. And now we're getting, and you tie that together too. Like, I think part of the appearance with Douglas Murray on Joe Rogan and the reason why he was up for it to go against Dave Smith was to try to tie over the sentiment that if and he repeated the same kind of rhetoric with Ben Shapiro, I believe, earlier today, talking about how if Israel falls, then it actually is like this major net negative for America. And like, we don't understand just how bad those consequences will be. And so they're kind of tying together, like, if this foreign country falls, it's like, well, now America's next, right? And Iran's going to start launching all these attacks on America. And it's like this crazy stretch of like logic. And so kind of pairing the fact that, Israel's national interests are the same as America's. And if we don't do these things and these land invasions, but ultimately, I thought, Scott, if he's right, and it does require more boots on the ground and like actually sending more American blood, young blood, and more generational loss of men over there and again, it's like, for what point, at what point is it America's interest to be doing these things? Especially when you already get it outlined of like the shipping lanes, right? Like that whole thing gets dropped because it's clear like America doesn't benefit from that. It's all these other random countries. And it's just to me, it's sad because like there's a kind of a joke in there where it's like fell for it again, like, right, like maybe Trump's not gonna, he's gonna renege on his promises, but now it feels like a lot more real. Like, especially with the increasing rhetoric in the last couple of days, the amount of people they're kind of sending out to do public tours, that I'm really concerned that we will, by the end of Trump's term, be in Iran. We are going to have American men on the ground near and around Iran. That just seems to be the direction we're going, and I'm terrified of it.
Right. Well, the unfortunate thing is, apparently, Iran could be a couple weeks away from either having a nuclear weapon or being fully equipped to develop a nuclear weapon. It's one of the two, and I wasn't 100% sure when I was looking through what these people were saying, because they're saying, one person saying, 2 weeks from having a nuclear weapon, and then another person saying 2 weeks from being able to develop one. So I don't know which one of those scenarios it is, but if Iran has a nuclear weapon, that is obviously a huge threat to Israel. And I've been not really reevaluating, but I've been reevaluating my opinion as far as the American alliance to Ben Shapiro's favorite company. I see Pablo Escobar mentions that Murray got some sort of award from Israel for essentially doing propaganda. That's good to know. But I'm wondering, with the state of America right now, if we're going to really engage in this trade war with China, and we're going to try to mess up BRICS and do everything, and I've been kind of saying, I've been advocating for leaving NATO and entertaining a potential alliance partnership with Russia, particularly because it's so close. I mean, it's only it's actually just our next door neighbor when you're coming off of Alaska and you're talking about those two islands with the international date line. It's crazy. Right. Two islands are right next to each other, and one is like 20 hours ahead of the other one because the day starts at one and ends at the one that's right next to it. But if that's the case, we really need to have a strong alliance with Israel, because who else is there if we peace out on NATO other than Russia, and we're not trying to partner with China essentially. So
Well, you
an
still have the North
alliance,
American alliance, right? You would still have
right?
Canada and Mexico.
Right, but Canada is not offering anything other than border security for the United States, and pretty much the same thing with Mexico. I mean,
Right.
they're not really helping us militarily. I wouldn't say a whole lot. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it just makes me think. Yeah, I don't like how we support Bench Barrel's favorite country.
Yeah,
Same thing.
company.
Same thing.
Yep.
Like on their offensive attacks, like we have this treaty, this agreement, this alliance to help defend them. We fund the Iron Dome essentially and stuff like that. But I think that it might be wise to keep Israel close. And, I was to the point where I was ready to just be like, yo, they can defend themselves. I don't support what's going on over there. But maybe with the world changing the way that it is, it's just a hypothesis. It's just a theory. And I'm still wondering, my way through it or whatever. But it's just like, can't help but, be curious, like, who else would have our back?
Right.
I mean, granted,
Yeah.
like even if they are in charge of the United States government or whatever, I think for Americans, it might still be better off, more beneficial to keep that alliance strong as possible. On a grander scale. I don't know. Like I
Right.
said, I've
On the
just been kind of
practical side of
reevaluating
things.
and thinking my way through it over the last few days. And this conversation with Dave Smith and Douglas Murray has, got me thinking.
Yeah, I mean, well, a couple of things to address there too, like, what people don't, and it's like it's very confusing. So I don't blame people for like not understanding it because I didn't really understand it until like a couple weeks ago. But so Iran, and so this is the comparison that I got. So basically, Iran and many other countries have this thing called like latent nuclear capabilities. Latent just basically means, and basically what TNT had alluded to there, which actually Iran can do it, and so is Japan. Japan's exhibited these things that they basically like charge they make the uranium like rich or pure enough, like they
Yeah, they
enrich the uranium to certain
enrich
levels
it. Mhm.
that can be then used to be weaponized for nuclear weapons. And so basically, and this is for the last like 20 plus years, Iran has been a part of, and I believe it's the IAER or IARE. And there's a couple other organizations, like 3-letter, 4-letter acronym organizations that kind of oversee this stuff, but they've been involved with the peaceful nuclear development programs under the civilian nuclear program development for a long time. And so they, like Japan, have shown that they can enrich uranium to the levels that would be required to then build a weapon. It's just that, like, again, they know obviously if they were to do so or move to do so, and people find out that, it now then throws international, disputes into rest. And I think, I'm not sure if there's any kind of particular statutes or like war crimes that would be committed if they did end up fully developing anything like that. It's just basically to point to the fact that they do have the technology. They've just not done it yet. And so that's even like an argument too that I think Scott had put out there, which is like he thinks like that in and of itself shows that like Iran's clearly like not choosing to be irresponsible. It's like if they've had the ability to do it for 20 plus years and then haven't developed the nukes, it's clear that like they're at least playing ball with people when they go to the international table and they're looking at treaties and compromise and relationships. They're clearly listening on that end to like not do anything with that. But I mean, I do ultimately foresee it though. It's just the fact that the push, and for me the overall thing is like, what is America getting, right? Like we're very quickly moving from all this momentum we had in the first like 20, 30 days of like, that's great, look at the executive order, bang, 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 to immediately like, oh, wait a minute, we're not getting all of the Epstein files. Oh, wait a minute, we're not getting everything released at once. And for me, it's just been watching a fumble after fumble, a stumble, and now we're just kind of relaxing on the fact that we're not going to get like 80% of what we were promised for. And that, you know, I see like Benny Johnson today posting up like Tulsi Gabbard and RFK and Pam Bondi are all going to be at the UFC match tonight. And it's like, bro, like, I don't give a shit if they're going to go to the UFC game. Where's the arrest? Where's the Epstein files? And so I'm already getting to the point now where these partisan hacks like Benny, I'm like, bro, like, can you you have a massive platform. Can you hold these people accountable and be like, hey man, like, why are you going to the UFC game when like we're not getting anything that we were promised yet? Like, and sure, fair enough. There's always like the, you know, take time, whatever. Regardless, it's like we're in a position now where I feel like we're not, by the end of the 4 years, we're not going to get anywhere close to like even 4 million people deported at the end of Trump's presidency. And we're
Oh
not
yeah.
going to end up getting full disclosure on a lot of these declassified files. And again, I just ultimately feel like we're not moving in the right direction. And I think Pablo's right. Like, you know, it goes to the fact that it feels like no matter what, there's interests that are being giving first priority over the American people. And it's like every single time. Now, luckily, you know, what I did see was I think the State Department finally had issued, they're going to mandate that people have to report if they notice anti-Christian bias. But this comes like we get one, here's one like meager thing out of like the 19,000 different executive orders and statutes and policies that have been outlaid for like, you know, anti-Semitism. Is like, here's this one thing that for anti-Christian rhetoric. I mean, at the end of the day, to me, it's like, yeah, I'm just kind of disgusted with it, and I'm too old to really care and have heroes in this industry. I want to see results. I have a newborn daughter. I want to see these illegals out of my goddamn country. I want to see
Right.
people get thrown in prison. I want to see the J6 committee people thrown in prison. I want to see these people. Matter of fact, I would go beyond what YouTube even allows on this platform. Like, so not even getting arrested is like multiple layers away from like what I would have liked to have seen from a leader in this country. And again, though, most people are like, you know, well, we're waiting for Trump, right? We'll get it done sometime. It's like, I'm sorry, I don't have the patience to have that kind of faith in somebody like that. I'm not
Right.
seeing it, so I got to call it for what it is.
Right. And you know, a lot of this stuff is, you know, long-term fixes, and just Trump's not going to be able to get it done in 4 years or even, you know, 2 years really before the midterms, because typically you know, incumbent president loses the midterm, you know, with the House or whatever, or the Senate. So
Right.
the time is definitely running out. And sorry, I lost my train of thought there a little bit. So what I was just saying was that it's a long-term thing. So, you know, I'm beginning to come to the understanding, the realization that hopefully Trump can start breaking some molds. At least what we're seeing, the lack of what we're seeing in Congress, pertaining to ratifying some of these executive orders into law, and their lack of doing it just leaves the door open for the next president with the swipe of a pen on day one to remove a lot of these good things that Trump has signed. And you know, Thomas Massey has been harping on this and talking about how you know, we should be voting on ratifying Trump's executive orders, making them law, giving good reasons why they should be doing it, and instead, you know, the wave continues of appearances from his cabinet and some of the top people, continually giving interviews to Fox News. I get it; they're probably the number one outlet that's going to have the most reach. I mean, realistically, no, because some of these podcasters are actually reaching more people, more demographics, things like that than what Fox News is reaching.
Right.
Unfortunately, they just can't get over their old way of thinking that Fox News is their go-to. At least we're seeing fewer of their appearances on, you know, MSNBC and CNN and things like that. At least they were kind of getting that part of it right. But to me, I don't know. There's this big show, and the one thing about Fox News is you keep going on Hannity, you know, he's going to be in the bag for you, you know. So, it's a little bit different if you just post it directly to X, even though you could reach the same audience you could reach more people potentially by going to the social medias and going to the Tim Pools, Patrick Bet-Davids, Russell Brands, Pierce Morgans, Tucker Carlsons of the world. You know what I mean? Actually reaching your audience, your supporters, than just going on Fox News, right? We always got to hear it through a post on X or something like that. Whenever they do this, we end up getting the news from clips on X. We're still not going to the direct source or whatever. But it's Dan Bongino is out there saying, well, the work is being done. Takes time. Patience is kind of running out. Trump got off to such a rapid start. Now the hard part comes. The easy things that he could sign with, get done with the swipe of a pen. But at this point, we might see a lull. It's unfortunate what you said about Doge's goals. I know that they wanted to reduce $1 trillion of spending, and at the same time, Trump wanted to reduce the annual debt, or not the debt, but the deficit. By another $1 trillion for a total of $2 trillion. Not sure if that's going to work out or how that's going to work out. I definitely still have patience. I definitely understand that Trump was the better option. I mean, with Kamala Harris in there right now, it'd be a whole different story, right? So, I mean, we got the best of what we could in there, and we're going to hold his feet to the fire. We are in this place right now where it's going to slow down. The progress is going to slow down. We don't want to get into this war with Iran. It's funny because, now we're talking about this war with Iran, and it's like, wouldn't it be really nice to have that $5 trillion Air Force base that Biden gave up in Afghanistan right now? You know what I mean? Right. It's just, it's such bullshit to think that we're going to start this war with from a weaker position. If he does, and I'm still holding out, my hopes that this is once again Trump's big ask. He says a lot of things, and then the landscape changes because he said that. So maybe this is another situation where he puts the heavy threat on Gaza, saying we'll take it over and make it Mara Gaza, right? And then all of a sudden Egypt and all the surrounding countries want to talk about taking in the refugees and working out a peace deal and everything like that, because having the U.S. control the Gaza Strip would be even worse for Egypt and these other countries. So maybe Trump threatening, just to go full on support against Iran, in light of them also developing this nuclear technology and stuff like that, probably all goes hand in hand. He can show some support to our ally in Israel, and at the same time be a hindrance to Iran's development, and threaten all-out war or whatever. It's pretty wild to think that we couldn't fly over their country without doing this big on-foot invasion first. But I guess that's just the reality of war. It's not as easy as just flying drones over or whatever when you got a good strategic position. Like I said, it probably would help if we had that $5 trillion Air Force base back, but I think that's gone.
They met with leaders. They met with leaders in Oman, I believe it's the city name, like a day or two ago. I believe the report that I saw said that Iran would agree to denuclearization or not proceeding with a development of their advanced nuclear weapons program if Israel was also denuclearized. That was like their terms on the agreement.
I don't like that agreement.
Right. And so they're basically like not backing down because like they refuse to like, if they have the capability, basically like they refuse to step down and let Israel be the only Middle East power that has nukes, which again, I listened to Professor Morandi's arguments, and obviously he's like an Iranian too, so he's going to be clearly biased. But I go back to this whole thing of like, being the American empire. What position, what moral authority do we have as a country that has done all of these, destabilization operations through our intelligence programs, do we have the moral high ground to tell another country like, hey, we don't want you to have nuclear weapons? It's like I don't see it, right? I love America, but I hate American government. I hate the intelligence institutions. I hate everything that has been captured and has been taken away. I mean, we're living in a current iteration of reality where most men, especially younger men, they look around and they just see a bunch of things that was stolen from them because we served other countries and other elitist interests over just the average regular American guy. So
Mhm.
we've walked away from so many things. And so when I hear this, is like America's going to try to, I mean, like if I was in a foreign country, right, I would put myself in those shoes, right? So if I wasn't an American and I have like this country and I know on paper, yeah, these guys have been involved in the Middle East and they did all these destabilization. This is the country that funded ISIS. They funded Al Qaeda, and they're going to come over here and tell us like, it's like, to me, it's like, screw off, dude.
Right.
Like, you're gonna sit here and play God over, like, the last 100 years with all of your intelligence operations, blackmail operations, and then you're gonna come to my country that we're trying to develop that you won't get your hands out of, and then tell us that, like, I'm sorry. And, like, that's the kinda where I'm at too, is like, why are we trying to tell these people? Like, I get coming to the table too, but, I mean, when it comes to war and such too as well, right? All's fair in love and war. So to me, it's like, I really just I could care less. I could care less, and I wish I could.
Right.
But when all the rhetoric surrounding all of the highest officials of your government constantly revolves around the Middle East, you have to, it just comes, it's baked into the cake. It's like, we got to deal with this issue and figure out why all of our interest and our attention is captured over there. And when things don't make sense, you can't blame people for looking at it and going, hey, dude, like, why Israel, man? Like, what's going on over here? Why Iran? Like, how does this help? How does this make my eggs cheaper?
Right.
How does this how does this get, how does
How's
this
this
get me
drop
back
the
to a single
interest
income?
rate? Yeah, how's this drop the
Right,
interest rate?
right,
How's this help
exactly,
make my health insurance cheaper? How's this make my, house insurance and everything cheaper?
right, and it
Yeah,
goes back to that argument too, which is like, here we are, our defense budget being bloated again, wanting to get asked to go up to like $1 trillion too, and it's like, what are we doing here?
right.
Like, what the hell is going on? What's the future vision, right? What's the plan, right? We keep getting told, here's the plan. What the hell is the plan?
Well, it's like one at a time we're making a new enemy, a new generation of enemies by killing off the brothers and fathers and uncles of these young kids in the Middle East, you know what I mean? One country at a time we're making new enemies out of the remaining generations, right? So war with
Right.
Iran is certainly in 20 years, 18 years from now, 10 years from now is going to breed the next generation of young people there that hate us, that
Well,
hate us.
right. I mean,
So
to think about that, exactly what I can't remember what that movie was, but it has that scene where the guy kills 3 generations of the same family. Um,
I've seen that
they
clip
keep like
actually.
the next, like the son dies, and then the dad grabs the gun, and then the grandpa grabs the gun, and
Getting
then
9%, they're going, please don't pick it up, please don't pick it up, and then they do, and then
right,
yeah,
exactly, and then imagine that's like happened to you, and then you see over here, you know, you see a clip from Piers Morgan, and it's Ben Ferguson screaming at the top of his lungs, frothing at the mouth, "These people are animals. We have to take away all their rights. They can't have nukes. We can't trust them. They're all terrorists." Yeah, I'm gonna play ball with that guy. Like, I mean, it's like, it's so nonsensical, and it just like, it just continues it, right? It's like, you're not going to find common ground on eschatological reasons. Like, right, you're not, there's no marrying of these Abrahamic faiths. Like, they have literally been nonstop at odds since they're like their inceptions. And it just, to me, it's wild that that just doesn't get through to people. And like, we're not a moral authority on anything, dude. We literally had Weekend at Bernie's, the last president, right? Like, we cannot be trusted as a nation. Like, we can't even pick leaders that are breathing and even trust our people and the Democratic Republic to pick people that'll be conscious, breathing, charismatic, trustworthy, moral leaders. Like, we can't even do that. So how dare we sit and lecture anybody? And it goes back to the tried and true, which is like, we are suffering on mental grounds, physical grounds, financial grounds, psychological grounds. I mean, we have issues where kids are being raised by iPads, you have all this degenerate bullshit going on. It's like, dude, I could give a shit less what's going on overseas.
Mhm.
Bring the money back home, worry about the people in this country, and then we can move on. We can kind of go on forward. Go follow on Jordan Peterson's logic,
I
right?
was gonna say that goes back to Jordan Peterson's original best, point that he's ever made, which is clean your own room
Right.
first.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and
six
there's like
bomber.
a
We're a
term for
country
it.
with no identity anymore. Oops, that one right there.
Right.
True, and that's what happens when you have unprotected borders. You start losing your culture piece by piece, and you start losing your religion piece by piece, and people don't even know who they are, their ancestors, and then they don't know their neighbors, and eventually you can't even understand each other because we got so many different languages. We don't have a national language going on. We're teaching grade schools in Spanish and English now. We got
Right.
Spanish translator in every courtroom in the country.
Right. And here we are. And people, and Maha was a spectacular movement that happened like under the umbrella of MAGA, which now, I mean, like, I don't really know what we're getting with that, but that was also on grounds not just for physical health, but like what Pablo highlights there for like spiritual health too. Like we as a people, and there's a term for it, and I kept hearing it on the culture war with that one libertarian guy, and I cannot remember what he kept calling it. But basically, we are in a non-identity country right now. Like we have very little norms, if any norms at all anymore, right? It seems like all we do as a country is like, look at this person, they're breaking the norms. And that's kind of where we're at right now. It's like we have abandoned all tradition. We're our parties are the progressives and the retards, which I thought was hilarious because Harrison Smith knocked out of the park with this, right? Republicans are what? Speed bumps, right? All they seemingly have done for a long period of time is essentially slow things down, right? Or like slow the
Hmm.
progress down.
Hmm.
Which what's the root word of retard? It's to to retard something.
Oh yeah,
It's to slow it
slow it
down,
down.
right? So it's
Yeah,
like our parties are the progressives and the retards, and that's what we're dealing with. And I can't to me it's like when I look out and I see so many like young men entirely disenfranchised, and I see another 18-year-old who made $1.3 million the moment she made her OnlyFans go public when she turned 18 years old. It's like I just resort back to, I think it was Wade Stotts who made that? Maybe it wasn't Wade Stotts. But again, it literally isn't going to matter at all what anyone effing thinks when you have a 30% of your young 18 to 24 male population is ready to literally like put bombs on their chests and blow buildings up.
Mm,
And it's not even going to matter what you think or what you say because they don't care either. Because
right.
you
Or they're
cannot
willing to strap one on
continually
their kids or whatever. Yeah.
right. And it's like they're experiencing not getting, generational wealth. They're kind of being atomized, can't enter the dating market. Government doesn't serve any of their interest, and meanwhile, all the institutions to mainstream media, all mediums really, are telling them like they're just worthless. And all your girls are telling you, man, you're garbage. I'd never even look at you unless you make 200K. I mean, and you wrap all that up, and I mean, yeah, I mean, what do you expect, right? In 15, 20 years down the line, none of that improves. I mean, don't be shocked when you start seeing a bunch of very, very radical, revolutionary kind of extremist things happening in this country because people won't care. They'll resort to violence and they're not going to give a shit that you don't care either.
Right. Well, I mean, we see a lot of. Well, I mean, I don't know. I can't really relate it directly, but we saw. Uh, TNT had a long message get canceled. Uh, no, I was just
Right.
thinking we kind of see this within youth people already. That guy, Carmelo Anthony, he stabbed um, the Metcalf kid. What was his first name?
Austin.
Yeah, stabbed Austin Metcalf in the heart. Not only was he, quick to go to the knife, he went, kill shot. He
Right.
wasn't, going for, stab somebody in the arm or whatever, and that's going to get somebody off of you. It was, rather, to the extreme.
Right. Well, then there's another example, right? Like we can't even get our guys, say I use that term loosely. We can't even get our guys to not be terrified of being called racist. to just even tackle the issues, which is black on black crime, as well as just the general issue of violence with young males in the black community. I mean, literally petrified. And, I think there's a couple of schools of thought, but part of people would think that that's why Tim Pool took the stance that he did, because when he had that show that would have aired on that moment of what happened with Austin Metcalf, he did have a black guest come on. And it seemed as if he took that stance because he's just terrified of being called racist. But the reality is like, that's in no way could you claim that Carmelo Anthony could claim self-defense. There's multiple different arguments there, whether it's proportionality or otherwise, or you go the argument of obviously the public school grounds too, and so many things that you could throw in there. But at the same time, that's you stretch that not even just Tim Pool. There's many people in that in the conservative space, and that speaks to the whole Jordan Peterson thing, which is like we have a smorgasbord of problems here in America that are deeply plaguing us to a degree where it is people are wearing anchors just trying to get to the next day. And you can only ignore that for so long before it's going to reach things like consequences that you can't come back from. And so I just inevitably, when I look at the mass deportations kind of getting taken off the table in comparison to like some of this public reaction with Carmelo Anthony. And I mean, the guy's almost at $500,000 raised for that. And he killed a kid at a track meet.
Right. And they're justifying it by saying it was legal. It's legal funding. When we originally brought this up, my main gripe was that GoFundMe was allowing the fundraising account to stay open for him, while at the same time they wouldn't allow Kyle Rittenhouse. Well, it turns out that it's Give, Send, Go, and Give, Send, Go is principled in that they're not going to stop anybody from having a fundraiser. So I was wrong about that. It wasn't GoFundMe, it was Give, Send, Go, which they allowed Kyle Rittenhouse to raise money. Granted, I think Kyle Rittenhouse's situation was 100% clear from the beginning that it was self-defense, whereas this Carmelo Anthony story is not as clear cut. I haven't seen any videos. I'm sure their videos are out there and they will be seen at some point. Could be wrong about that, but that's just my guess. And the first thing about this is school zone. You know what I mean? The fact is, if you commit certain crimes within so many feet of a school zone, your punishment is much higher. And the whole purpose of that is to protect the students while they're at school, right? Or in the school's, property and things like that.
Right.
And Tim Pool related that to like a gun-free zone, like somebody putting a sign on their business and saying this is gun-free, right? But it's not apples to apples at all. And so, kids fight, and kids are territorial. And so when this kid was sitting in a place that he wasn't supposed to be, it's only natural that the people who had permission to be there would say, hey, look, you got to go. And, there's people out there saying, no, you can defend yourself no matter what. If people put hands on you, you can defend yourself, this and that. But the reality is, there's kind of this assumption that the kid's not going to have a knife or go for a knife being on the school grounds in the first place. And that's kind of why things go where they go with students in these type of scenarios, because it's worst case a fight and suspension, right? Nobody's thinking they're going to get shot or stabbed. And
right.
Yeah, these things happen. Had a shooting happen when I was in high school, my freshman year. A kid that went to my school was a couple years older, shot and killed some people at a football game on Friday night. And there was all this fear going on both schools that there was going to be retaliation afterwards. And it was this huge security issue for both schools for months. And, that's why they take these things so seriously. And so I don't think that this kid has any grounds for self-defense. I 100% believe that Tim Pool was wrong. Maybe he's being misguided or being thick in the head, or he was just afraid of being called a racist. But it's just really sad that this kid first reaction was to go to the knife rather than just leave. Even if it was raining, just go get wet. You know what I mean? Or whatever. But and then like I said earlier, that when he did choose to use the knife, he went for, a fatal blow. And it doesn't matter at that point if he asked later on if the kid's okay, because he did. He asked somebody, is the kid going to be okay? And all that type of stuff. And, it's crazy. I saw Tim Pool put a post on X asking what kind of penalty he should receive. Should it be the death penalty, life, 25 years, or something else? And I felt like, honestly, they're all too harsh for a kid. But I don't know. I guess we just got to let this one play out in the courts, and then we can make a better decision. But I don't know. It's just so weird. Like I was saying, just to round it out, like the original thought was, which was my original thought, which was the GoFundMe account remaining open and not being equal treatment, based on like a racial division or something like that. But now I'm realizing that it's Gibson Go, it's equal, and now we're just looking at kind of the youth society, and you can factor in even the black crime rates, right? But that's like kind of further down the priority list for me is the broader spectrum of black crime or whatever. I think this was kids, and there's a racial element to it, but it's dumb kids for the most part, and we should be looking at their parents and things like that. And I don't know, it's weird.
Yeah, I do. I saw your comment in there, Jay. I appreciate that. It's funny. But I mean, in Texas specifically, right? It was like the law of proportionality. It's like, if someone's you're fighting with fisticuffs, and the fight's already been established, right? Like you're in a contentious period, and someone pushes you, right? Or in this case, like maybe pulled something or touched your backpack. The moment that you escalate it with a weapon, the moment that you go to a sword or a machete or a knife or a gun, I mean, like you just lost the right of self-defense because you escalated it from like non-lethal force to lethal force. And I think that was largely the argument that most people are laying out in Texas too. But again, I struggle with like what the punishment should really be. I mean, ultimately, I don't think you have to look at this anymore in individual cases. I think the longer that we keep looking at these cases individually, the more it's going to kill us. I think it's clear that the reason why these things keep happening is because we are actually not being harsh enough. We are not deterring people from doing these things enough. The fact that you so easily with a knife stabbed another 17-year-old in the chest. I mean, like you murdered that kid.
Right.
And ultimately, like I think that you have to look at things beyond life. You have to start looking at things that go like, if we want to start deterring people from this happening on a daily basis, we have to up the penalties. It's clear that the public's just not getting it. It's not okay to kill these kids. It's not okay to do these things. I mean, it's very basic. It's disciplinary, right? It's like, well, hey, my son did this. I spanked him twice. Well, he did it again the next day. Okay, well, I had spanked him twice. So he did it again the next day. Well, you got to start looking at other disciplinary measures. You got to either up it, you got to up the penalty, or you just got to find a whole different route of disciplinary measure. And that's really the issue. Is like we're looking at when it happens, when it's black on black, no one gives a shit. And it happens all the time. Literally all the time. It's nonstop, like gang violence, especially when you look at places like Chicago.
Right.
It's like that. Those guys who get like the 10-year sentences and like the 15-year sentences, and then they just come back out and like, they kind of missed out on life. And then when it's white on black, it induces riots. I mean, next thing you know, BLM will be coming out. They're collecting money. It's like ding, 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 right? And then everyone makes to feel bad. It's like, wow, doesn't anyone care about black lives? And then when it's black on white, It's we got to sit here and justify 6 ways from Sunday. Like, actually, like this is why it shouldn't happen. I mean, bro, point blank, you had a black kid stab a white kid in the heart. It's a
Right.
major issue
At a school event.
because at a school event. And I think what people are missing is I think this is indicative again of the disturbance that's happening in like the young males of this country too. Why was a black male so ready to stab another kid in the heart?
Right.
And I think that, I mean, that speaks to, again, not being spiritually healthy as a
Yeah, I
country.
blame video games.
Yeah, right. I blame GTA. No, I mean, I think when you look at specific cultures, and I think even Jason Whitlock spoke to this a little bit too, which is you have the culture where the music they listen to is all about like, you know, I mean, we're having a whole like up and coming like young rappers now. I think it started with like YMW Melly made a whole song about how he killed a guy and didn't mean to. Ultimately, that was like used against him in the court of law. I think the same thing was happening with like Young Thug too, with like racketeering and in his RICO case. And now you're having
Fannie
small
Willis.
right, and who I could never name in my entire life, making entire songs. And there's a theme for it now. Maybe someone in the chat knows, but they're like, you know, they're making whole songs and mixtapes about how they are literally killing each other.
Yeah,
And then they'll
is
go
that
and do these
drill?
things.
That's a drill rap, right? Is that what you're
It's
talking about?
it's a step above Joe Rap. This is like a recent evolution of it. So it came from Joe Rap, which is kind of the style that it's going into, but I don't
Oh,
even know what you call this new one. I mean, there was a very, very public case that kept happening between like these two like rivaling groups. And it was like one rapper was like would make a song and then this guy would go out and kill him and he would make a song and they would shoot the music videos at the cemetery where the person was buried at. And this has been like getting covered quite a bit by like the you know, in hip hop circles, which they're like, dude, who was even listening to this stuff? This is demonic. I mean, like, there's like one video of a guy who's like basically like he looks like he's possessed in his music video, and the music
right.
video is him at a cemetery, like they're pissing on the grave of someone that he's bragging about killing. And then
Mm.
you look at like, you know, you look at like Hollywood, you look at movies, you look at all these other things that's like, you know, black culture and like what you get respect for in black culture. It's like, well, no wonder that, you know, you get like these 17-year-olds who want to do these things. And the one thing that I thought was a phenomenal take, and if you're familiar with him, his name's Tommy Sotomayor. And Sotomayor was on with Tommy Lauren, and he said the scariest thing that he saw from this and what he sees with like the GoFundMe and the Give Send Go for Carmelo Anthony is that his fear is what does this say to other young black men when you have a clear case of a young black male murdering a white student and he's being applauded for it as if
Mm.
this was like a blow for blacks against the white man.
That the community is going to run to your savior every time.
Right. And like that sets a precedent there that what if the next kid, you know, maybe he doesn't get it, he doesn't get attention or like he doesn't have a bunch of respect or like, you know, and he's not like the most token person in the black community. Well, what does that say then? You know, is that going to encourage him then to, you know, to do something and murder a white kid? Because now it's going to get him a bunch of money, a bunch of like rapport in the media, and may go famous overnight. And then you're going to have the entire black community for the most part arguing like, I don't even care what you know, you see all these different, you know, things in there. Like, I don't even
Mhm.
care. And you know, I'm glad that it happened. Like one of those viral tweets was that this girl who's like, I don't even know the details of the story, but just know I'm on the black guy's side. And it's all like this very along racial lines, the tribalism there too. And I mean, I think he's ultimately right? It's very despicable when you look at the fact that he is getting this support. And then when you have supposedly like, you know, strong thought leader Tim Pool, who's you know, center right, it's like, yeah, what Carmelo Anthony did was self-defense.
Right. And look, I get it. Like when you put yourself in the one-on-one scenario, you take away all of um, the preventative measures and laws that were put into place to prevent this situation from happening in the first place. And you just reduce it down to one-on-one or 1-on-3 or whatever it was. And then you say, oh, well, yeah, you absolutely. There's no situation or scenario that a person can't defend themselves. I will never demand or expect a person to be in a situation where they can't defend themselves. But the main thing that he's forgetting in this was that the kid could have just walked away and left when they told him to leave. You're in the wrong place. He
Right.
chose to stay. He knew the whole time what he had in his bag.
Right.
And so it's premeditated. I'm with TNT as we go through this. I think it was definitely, premeditated murder. He didn't plan it when he went in there, but when he chose not to walk away, when he presented the weapon, said, "Try this." I think at first he said, "Touch me, see what happens." Then he said, "Punch me and see what happens." That's whenever they put their hands on him and tried to move him out of the area. And that's whenever he just, poked him and that was it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, one of the funniest takes I saw on this, and I disagree with him somewhat, but I feel like I'm just as autistic as him. The 9mm SMG account, which is getting more prominent in the conservative circle, and he kind of he hides it a little bit, but he is a lot more. He's like very National Socialist on those lines. So he's got like a bit of a weird take, but he's very prominent on X on right wing X. But he quoted one of Tim Pool's recent takes about Iran, and he was like, "Hold on, wait a minute. What if Iran says that the U.S. touched their backpack first?" And it was like, it's just hilarious because it's like he's just using that argument against Tim Pool, right? Like, what if Iran claims self-defense? It's like, hey, the U.S. touched my backpack. It's like, and it was just funny because it's it does highlight just the stupidity of it too, and and I think it's a good clarifying point too for all those people who might have been blinded by following Tim Pool for as long as they maybe did. Like, here's a nice big like raging red flag. Like, this guy is not conservative. This guy is a notorious fence sitter, and I think it speaks to what we talked about a day or two ago, which was, I think ultimately Tim Pool is just like a lot of the other grifters in the space. Sure, he's got opinions and sure he wants to say them, but I think ultimately his main goal is how can I generate as much engagement and clickbait stuff because I want to make as much money as humanly possible. And I think he's a lot less convicted than he kind of makes his appearance to be when he's doing his podcast. And so,
right. Well, I mean, you saw how it happened for Destiny. I mean, he rode a wave for 4 months, 5 months. Every video I made about Destiny was getting mad clicks, all in the wake of him saying what he said about Corey Compatore, the firefighter that was killed at the Butler, Pennsylvania, when they were trying to assassinate Trump.
right.
You remember that? That got Destiny tons of run. So it's beneficial to some folks in opportune times to say crazy things that people aren't going to support, but yet will demand reactions and comments and everything like that, which is
was it the 20v1 when he said that Corey Compatore deserved to die? Was it one of those Jubilee things that he was doing?
No, he was just streaming. He was just on his channel. I think it was actually what got him removed off of Twitch, but I think he was streaming to YouTube, Twitch, everything that he was allowed to stream to at the time. And he was just on there saying, "Nah, guy deserved it. If you're going to go to a MAGA rally and support Trump, you get what you get," and blah, blah, blah. And he was being very cold-hearted about it, cold-blooded about it. And
right.
Yeah, and so this might have been an opportunity, to your point, where Tim Pool just like, I'm going to take a controversial position and just see how it goes, because there is this dividing line. It's like a new dividing line, where beforehand it seemed like there was a clear-cut self-defense line, whereas now, like I said, there's this new dividing line where it's like people got to kind of reevaluate the situation and break it down to the minute, factors of it. And
I thought it was as simple as like he wanted something because he was taking so much heat from meeting with Netanyahu. And you even get like Kim Iverson, dedicating like whole news segments to like that happening.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it was like, I kind of thought like he was like, what can I say that's so effing retarded that no one will talk about me meeting with Netanyahu? And I think that's kind of what he went with. I think he was just getting too much negative heat for that. Obviously, because I think most of his audience who had left him in these last couple of years have been over that specific issue. And then you have something like that happen. I think this was kind of a way to narrative. What's the right word? To PR control, right? Preventing as much damage as possible. So instead of going silent, he was transparent about it. But obviously, if you want to get the attention off of something like that, you throw something else into the mix too,
Right.
which is oh, wait a minute, Commando Anthony, that's self defense, guys. Look, I definitely think that, guys. He definitely was self defense, and so then the
Well,
whole
it's like
narrative
he kind of
became
had like a
silenced off of that.
realization as he was going through it. He kind of like timidly initially kind of had like a what if, I'm not sure what I think about this. And then as he progressed, he was like chose to take that harder stance. And then Tim's really good at doing these analogies just on the spot where he can
Right.
kind of um, break down a scenario and give you a different perspective or way of looking at it, but it's still fairly relevant. He's pretty good at that actually.
Right.
And I'm with TNT Cycles. He said I liked him. I agree with him about 50% of the time, but I think he's genuine and simply trying to play within the rules. I don't know. I'm right there with you. Maybe 50, 60% of the time, I like the show because of the guests that he brings on. They're experts in their field, and there's genuinely typically a good conversation. Tim has a good interviewing tactic where he's able to break down people to where their dividing line is, what breaks them, where they're will jumps situation on a story or whatever like that.
Yeah.
And he's pretty good at that type of stuff. I do think recently, to your point, since he had the meeting with Netanyahu, I've caught him a couple times being a little bit more partial to Israel's side of things. I don't know if that's just genuine or if that's something new. You know what I
Storm where
mean?
the wind blows. Yeah.
But when you meet with Netanyahu, I can't help as a free thinker include that caveat whenever I hear him say something pro or anti-Israel. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it's just kind of is what it is. But when you're to that level and the White House is calling you saying, "Hey, we want you to come and have an off the record Chatham House conversation with a world leader," you're going to go. You know what I mean? It's not like you're going to take this higher standard and not go or whatever like that. So, I mean, it's hard to judge him and say that he's in the bag for him because I would have taken that same meeting too. I think we all would have, right? We're in this industry and you get that opportunity, you take it. But
you got to speak for yourself on that one.
I mean, you wouldn't go meet with a world leader if they asked you to go and have an off the record conversation. I absolutely would.
Well, world leader, yes. Netanyahu, no.
I mean,
if I did, I would be getting kicked out. And you know what? Honestly, I would take that back. I would, and then I would leak the contents of it immediately, and I would probably more than likely get kicked out based on what my questions would be. But that's no news to anybody here. I'm extremely anti-Israel. I'm extremely anti-Christian Zionism. I find it to be a cancerous thing. But ultimately, though, I think more so it could be the narrative change, but I also think part of me also thinks based on who he had on as his guest too, he's like sweating, and he's like, "I have a black guy on my show, guys. I need to not be racist." Carmelo Anthony was completely justified. It's like that's kind of like what I take from that too. Like I really don't know what to think. I do think there are some good things that Tim can do, and I think his platform is good. But I think that caveat also needs to be met with the fact of what he said afterwards too, which was like Tim is now multiple times on his show put forward that he's concerned because he thinks when you look 20 years down the line in America, that Israel's not going to have support 20 years from now. And that's what his main concern with that is. And he was comparing things with like TikTok too, and what he sees with young people as well. And so his concern is like, how can I change that, or how can I balance that so it doesn't seem like so one-sided? I think all those got to get wrapped in all together in the in the amalgamation in the aggregate for Tim. But at the end of the day, it's because he's not truly conservative.
Right.
He just simply is not. So I'm not. It's the same way with Trump, right? It's like I'm not expecting Trump all of a sudden to come out and like he takes his shirt down and he's got like a swastika and a Christian logo next to it, and he said, "Guess what? Christian nationalist princes here, guys. Like I'm not expecting him to do that. Same way with Tim Pool, I would never expect him to take like on racial lines a very pro-white kind of stance based on like all to balance against the extremely anti-white rhetoric. He does pander to like to the multiculturalism, and I think part of it is because he's like he's mixed race. He's like a quarter Korean or something like that. So there's probably a part of that that's tied into it where he's already probably had a like diversified kind of upbringing. Or at least he kind of speaks to it a lot. He's kind of
Yeah.
very open about how he's mixed race and he's had different occurrences based on that too. Um, but again, I think you can respect some of the work that they get done, but at the end of the day, we gotta move past Tim Pool. It's in a perfect world, he would be. I say perfect world, in a more balanced world where the right wing actually exists, Tim Pool would be left wing, and there wouldn't be no debate about it.
Right.
Especially if you did allow a lot of the previous right-wing voices that have been banned from, having a voice on social media platforms. You would have like a group of people down the line on the right wing now, and by proxy and by nature, that would force Tim to the left because he would be opposed to a lot of those views that would be, that would be on the further right than him. So you would have
Right.
a lot more voices in that space.
Right. I'm with Tix Bomber right here. Swastika cross tattoo would F me up. I'd be so confused. Yeah, I don't think
Right.
the two actually go together at
Right.
all. But I don't know. I mean, being America first, I would separate from, communist Germany, but I don't
Right.
know.
That's what I'm just saying.
I
I'm
definitely
not.
would. I definitely separate, uh, communist Germany from Christianity as well. I don't think they're aligned at all. But yeah, I'd be pretty confused if I saw that.
Well, that's a different discussion for a different day. But Christianity at its base is it's socialist. It's not capitalist in any form.
Right, but it's not white either. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right. Yeah, but that's the thing too, is like, right, there's Elmo, right? The Nazi symbol was originally what?
Yeah, I mean, it was what symbol for the sun or something like that. It was taken from the Hindu
Yeah,
history or whatever, I think. But
right. There's like a symbol of like proliferation and like life and like infinity and like things like that. It was like used for, which is why it kind of has like that that swirl look to it. And there's like a bunch of different ones that can be, not like the Nazi swastika, but there's a bunch of similar logos that we're all kind of used to.
right,
It's like even infamously the anime series Bleach changed the hilt of the protagonist's sword, because the sword, and it's Asian too, it's very prominent in Asian culture as well. The hilt of his sword, when he changes forms in the series, it literally is a swastika. That his hilt on his katana is a swastika. And they
right.
what did they end up doing with that? I think they just outright changed what his blade was, or they quit having him go in that form because they got backlash on that. But again, this is like an older series too. I forget when Bleach was originally written. But they ultimately, with the newer series, they got rid of that, or like he just doesn't have that form anymore, or whatever reason they kind of got away from it. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing is like having the expectations for it, right? Which is like, I don't expect Trump to do anything that's not what a New York Democrat would do. And I don't expect Tim Pool to do anything that's not what a fence sitter, money hungry grifter would do either. So like, I don't even have those expectations for those people.
Right. Right. I don't know how we got off on this tangent. Let's go over to, let's see here. We kind of touched on the Bill Maher thing. Do we want to get more in depth on that? Still got the chicken, you guys. Still got the chicken.
We can touch on the Steve Bannon and Bill Maher meeting up together. There's like two kind of main points
I
to it.
would too, TNT. Sorry, you're saying.
Well, there's like two kind of bigger points or clips that were circulating because Steve Bannon had met with Bill Maher. The one is, and I don't know if you saw this, but early polling shows that Stephen A. Smith would would win over Kamala Harris. And
In
so now,
2028.
yeah, so now it looks like that there is a real path towards the campaign coming from Stephen A.
Stop.
Smith.
Ah,
She's getting rowdy. It's funny.
yeah,
And
my
then,
dog is trying to jump up on my chest and scratch me and knock in the microphone and everything.
It's funny. But the other one thing is also that Steve Bannon does believe that Trump is going to run for a third term. So there's like two major clips that came out of that. One's like 2 minutes long. The other one's like a minute long.
Okay, on the Steve Bannon one.
Yeah.
All right, let's pull that up here. Thank you. And get the dog out of here. All right, let me share my screen. That one? Okay. My bad.
Oh, you're fine.
All right, so this is Steve Bannon telling Bill Maher that Democrats need to run Stephen A. Smith. And, you know, Stephen A. Smith might be... oh, my camera got knocked. These are my hats.
Right.
Stephen A. Smith might be kind of coming around, getting a little red pilling over the last not 6 months, probably like 8 months now. Well, no, going back to November, 6 months. But let's go ahead. I'll just play this.
For a third term, is there any Democrat who scares you that he could be running against? Because I guess if we allow that, it could be Obama.
Absolutely. I think that'd be great. Alien versus predator. Let's do it. President Trump already said. President Trump already said.
That's kind of a worse insult to Trump.
If you want to bring President Obama, who I think has lost his fastball, but go ahead and bring him.
Okay.
Okay. Right now, all the governors you have, I don't think anybody will stand up to Trump. You're going to have to run someone like a Stephen A. Smith or someone in your kind of celebrity category. That'll be the Democratic nominee that would have the best shot at President Trump. But I think he's unbeatable. I think he's unbeatable because the coalition that he's built, and it's only going to get bigger because he's bringing back American manufacturing jobs to working class people.
Well,
and the Democratic Party abandoned working class people for the credentialed class that you talk about all the time.
No.
And you can't cosplay being a populist.
No, you're right.
If you're not prepared to take hard things like that, like the trade deals with President Trump.
I think he's right. Also, I'm echoing really bad.
You're echoing?
Yep.
I don't hear it.
I'm coming through twice.
Do you have a device with the volume turned up?
No, it's weird. It's just me.
Oh, weird. Ask Worrell for the part numbers to his horns. We all know about EV.
That's funny.
Let's see. That's really funny. But the Mustang I got is sick. I love the way it looks. It's blue. It's blue. You still echoing?
Let me see. Badly.
Crazy. I don't know why. And I'm not echoing?
No. Like I think I'm coming through louder than what I'm saying in the microphone.
Well, here, let me see if did that help?
Let me try. Yeah, that did help.
Why did sharing my screen make you echo?
I have no idea.
Teensy says Worrell takes pics next to it in his bikini. No, it's actually a canary yellow banana hammock. And when I'm old enough, I will be wearing that to the public pool as often as possible. I want to be one of those old guys that just don't give a care at the pool.
Should be going on vacation at some point in May. I'm excited for him.
Nice. Yeah, I'm going to Rock the Country concert here in a few weeks. I'm looking forward to that. We got some VIP tickets. It was really fun last year seeing Kid Rock.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be nice.
Yeah. And what was the other one we were going to do?
I had another video here from Bill Maher.
Yeah, the third
Bannon.
term. I'll just mute myself out when you play it.
Okay, I'm going to share the screen again. Maybe it won't do the echo this time. There we go. All right, here we go.
So doing it again.
Here it is.
Yeah, it is. That's wild.
Dang, that's crazy. There's nothing that I can. We're using StreamYard, Pablo. Do you guys hear him echoing? I don't hear you echoing. Or you guys hear Atlas echoing?
Let me try again. Yeah, I hear it loud. It's so loud.
Weird. I know you're jacking with your audio settings, but I wouldn't think it's one of your settings considering it changes whenever I'm sharing the screen. Okay, so you guys are hearing him echo. Weird. What would do that? The best echo I've ever heard. Okay, weird. I'm just going to play this real quick and then I'll take the screen share off.
The Constitution. Here it is. The Constitution. Can I read a passage to you? Amendment 22. No person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. And yet you keep talking about Trump's third. Maybe you should have this. Here, just put that.
I'll get you to sign it backstage and underline.
I will.
President Trump didn't bring up running for a third term. Myself and others brought up running for a third term. President Trump is going to run for a third term, and President Trump is going to be elected again on the afternoon of January 20th of 2029. He's going to be president of the United States.
Okay, but the thing I just read in.
Real quick, I don't know why Trump would even want a third term. I don't know why Steve Bannon's threatening his third term. My only guess is that it's a maneuver where Trump says something, or Bannon in this case, and forces a reaction. And I've heard that it's an attempt potentially to get the Democrats to enforce term limits. But we already have term limits on the presidency, so I don't know what to think about it.
Oh man, it's so bad.
Here, let me just play this, and then I'll turn it off and let you get your take in.
Word.
In there. It seemed like there was no wriggle room there. It seemed like it was just, 8 or 10 words that said only 2 times.
We have a team of people that are working. A team.
How can a team do something about that? What? I don't care if the team is 12 trillion people. The words are still the words.
Bill, every day in federal courts, right now in federal courts, there's 120 lawsuits on what President Trump's doing for his Article 2 rights on the unified executive theory. But he's chief executive, he's commander-in-chief, and he's chief magistrate and chief law enforcement officer. There's 100, and they're running to court every day to sue President Trump, all because the interpretation of this. The interpretation of this is open for interpretation.
How could it be open? Could I have it back? I'm sorry to be, no person. You would agree he's a person. Okay, shall be elected. He was elected to the office. That's the office of the president more than twice. Twice is once and then another time. I don't see what the team is fine.
Okay,
we'll disagree.
Listen, Bill. In 2014, you talk about long odds. In 2014, when I backed President Trump when I was running Breitbart, they said I'd turned Breitbart into Trump Pravda. Okay, the odds there, he pulled at 0. Then later in 2021, after he got back to Mar-a-Lago, when Fox abandoned him and the Murdochs abandoned him, the Republican Party abandoned him, the odds were longer then. So our group, the MAGA movement, and the tip of the spear of the MAGA movement, we've had long odds before. You know what? And we've come out winning twice. And we're going to come out, we've got long odds on this. We're going to come out winning a third time. On the afternoon of the 20th of January 2029, he's going to be president of the United States.
Crazy. All right, let me take this down.
Okay, am I in timeout anymore? Okay, no,
Nope,
we're good.
you
Okay.
should be good.
Well, a couple of thoughts there. I think you had stopped in to say why would he even want this? I don't think that he wants it. I think there's a number of reasons why they're doing this. One, I think that this kind of fodder is you kind of float these things out there and the retarded like Democrat lefties will scream and rage about it. It gives them something to chew on. It's like a bone for a dog. It's like dog's pissing me off. You get something for it, right? Like throw it at it. It's kind of like how they feel like what they're doing it to treat a lot of these idiot pundits there. But I also think if it is true, right? If there is a grain of truth to it, I think they probably are looking possibly at data, and maybe what they're seeing with polling with JD Vance is not as good as what they would like it to be. And just what we know as well, when you look at the Republican bench right now, if you don't get JD Vance in there, you're probably looking at the barrel between a Ron DeSantis or Vivek Ramaswamy, also vying for positioning. Now, Vivek is kind of MAGA adjacent. I think the majority of the MAGA base does not appreciate him based on his kind of fallout following his like Christmas comments about Americans are just a bunch of fat retards and we need to make our countries like China and invest in slave labor. I mean, I'm being hyperbolic, but that's basically the read on it. Um, I,
Right.
I, I think that there could be, and I think I recently saw this where JD Vance is actually pulling really badly in terms of like vice president like approval rate, which I'm not sure where that's even coming from. But I think there is a possibility where, and I think a lot of what we saw with the JD Vance memes as well was part of trying to capture that 2016 energy with Donald Trump with all the meme stuff as well too. But I also think like when you do get that energy behind JD Vance, and I think he had it for a little bit and still does when you're seeing like all these random face cards of JD, like blown up curly hair, like there's like the fat JD, there's like the JD with the lollipop, there's all these like, it looks like NFTs almost. There's like so many of these different little memes of them. Um, I'm not sure really what to think about it because I don't even know if that's something I would like to see messed with, right? Like, well, I don't like the precedent that you take that off and you can go to 3 terms and maybe it's like you can run as many times as you win, right? We go back to like if you win your election, you can go in, you can win 10 times in a row if you wanted to.
Oh,
I don't like what that would like as a precedent for the Democrats, who we know will do everything in their power to electioneer and force results and cheat. And what would that look like if we were up against an unstoppable force that has the institutions captured and then can then continually install over and over and over and over and over again a Joe Biden or another insert anybody like a Kamala Harris type figure. And then what's to happen then if like we just can't win an election that obviously is, the odds are against us in the first place. Because what was the rhetoric with this time, right? Too big to rig. That's what we had to do, right? We had to, that was the messaging, was like, we know there's a really good chance the Democrats are going to try to do things that's going to cheat. So we just have to compromise as many as our values as possible, make the conservative movement as big tent as humanly possible, so we can just get as many breathing human beings into that voting booth to vote for Trump. I just don't know what that means if it's true. But ultimately, I do err on the side. I think it's more of the art of the deal rhetoric, floating out something that's obviously super wild, more so as a feature to like maybe he's getting flack on something, or maybe he's trying to like really kind of hammer down some policy. Democrats won't get off my ass. Hey, say I'm going to run for a 3rd term again, man. Piss him off. Like that, get him out of my office. Maybe it's something along those lines. And that's kind of where I err on it because I don't think, knowing how old he will be, 82 at the end of this term, that he's himself is going to be wanting to run for a 3rd term. I just don't see it personally.
I couldn't imagine it. We've seen historically what 4 years being a president does to a man, like age wise. But the main thing about that is the point that you brought up, where when the pendulum swings and inevitably a Democrat wins the next, wins an election, not the next one.
Right.
Giving them, giving them an opportunity to run for a 3rd term is about as Republican as you can expect nowadays, right? Like you said in the initial, they're just a speed bump, right? And
Right.
so, yeah, we might get a 3rd term out of Trump hypothetically, but to what end? You know what I mean? Does that mean the next Obama that comes around, we got him for 4 terms,
Right.
5 terms? Is that when the dictatorship, when when the kingdom works its way back into the United States? I mean,
Right.
I'm just, that's one pendulum swing back our direction that I'm not willing to mess with. And inevitably, I think it would just be a ball that the Democrats run with and take much further than the Republican ever intended. Just kind of how the way things have turned out over the last 16 years or whatever. But
Right.
I'm with JB. Trump is trolling. There's no way he runs for a 3rd term. And I believe that. And I think JD Vance or Vivek or Ron or Don Jr. or Eric or somebody will be able to make the will follow up Trump just fine, right? I think we got plenty of people to choose from over an 82-year-old Donald Trump. You know, I mean, I don't know. Maybe things are so bad by then that we have to have Donald Trump a 3rd time. But if it's so bad after 4 years of Trump in a 2nd term, who the hell's going to want another term of that? You know what I mean? It has to be like
Right.
firing on all cylinders, and I don't want this momentum. I don't want this pace to be messed with. You know what I mean? And there's no hope. You know, that'd have to be accompanied with no hope for anybody else that would fit the bill, you know. And I think that's a very hard scenario to envision. And I'm more along the terms of just thinking that, look, we see Trump with a big ask. People think he's dumb. It's funny, he uses it to his advantage. I was assessing this the other day, and Trump says things, and then the media is like, "Oh, Trump's so dumb. He says this, right?" We'll do a salty cracker homage. And it's not at all what Trump genuinely intends. He just knows how they're going to run with it, take the ball, and spread the word for him. Yeah,
Right.
TNT. And then Trump gets to maneuver from that new position when all he had to do was just say something, you know. And so
Right.
the art of the deal, I've heard a lot of people, or I heard somebody suggest the other day, not a lot of people, but I can't remember who it was, but I heard somebody suggest that Trump needs to write Art of the Deal 2 after he finishes up this presidency, because there's a lot of new tactics and things like that he could expound on from his first book. And, you know, I mean, I just think that's exactly what's going on with him floating this 3rd term. It melts Democrats' brains, it consumes them, and it's a hindrance for them making progress for their party, really. When they're focused on Trump, they're not focused on their party, and that's you know, a good thing. If they can't come up with a good candidate to oppose whoever is the Republican candidate in 2028, you know, we'll be better off for it. We talked about Stephen A. Smith, but by then, the dude could be America first. Like, I'm not even joking. The dude, he called out the Democrats fairly well when they lost, and he sees the flaws. And, you know, if he ends up still being a Democrat, he might be, you know, for being on the Democrat ticket, he might be, dare I say or suggest, one of the better Democrat candidates that we've seen in a while. Somebody not from the political sphere, somebody that was an outsider, and might have a genuine, you know, make America great type of approach, you know, even if it's from his own perspective or whatever. But, you know, I don't know. I guess we'd have to just see how that goes whenever it comes down to it, because we've seen how the cesspool of the left pulls people back in pretty rapidly. So, you know, a little bright spot here or there that you're like, oh, Stephen A's not that bad on that one. Then he goes on the Breakfast Club and just ruins all the momentum that you thought he might have had.
Yeah. Well, I mean, dude, if it was like Stephen A. Smith versus like a conservative woman, I'd vote for Stephen A. Smith. I kind of think I could go back to like Kobe Bryant, you know, with his famous clip, you know, job's not finished. I think ultimately the goal is we get even a further right wing individual in that takes the reins over from Trump. and continually pushes things over and over again. Like the job's not finished until all of these ridiculously anti-white, anti-family, anti anything that is, moral or godlike or righteous, that is what the Democrat Party right now is absolutely and utterly annihilated off of the face of the earth. So badly to the point that someone utters anything about transgender, they are laughed off into depression. Like we make it like the idea
Right.
is so utterly shameful to ever hold or think or say that that's the victory I'm looking for. An utter conquest and death of this left-wing critical theory ideology, this intersectionalism, this multiculturalism, that dying a death in politics because the Overton window gets on a roll so far right that those people fall off into obscurity. That's the kind of victory I'm looking for. The complete kind of just overhaul of a win just based on the fact that we push things so far to the right in a response to against like how far we moved left, and hopefully can then hold the ground and
Right.
take things as far as right as possible until that natural kind of pendulum swing occurs, and then kind of anchor things down. And I think that's kind of even where Stephen A. Smith is already jockeying, right? Like I think the Democrat races are going to be people who are going to come out and say, man, like, I'm not Republican, man, but I definitely can't get behind pronouns. And people start clapping, and it's like you begin to like get the Democratic Party to have to adopt to the right wing and keep that kind of pushing. That's why ultimately, like, I hope it's somebody who comes out of the blue and runs for president in 2028. Don't think it's going to be someone who comes out of the blue. Unfortunately, we're kind of limited to what we're looking at. But in particular, I think there's a great video that I actually had kind of waiting in lock for some time, and it's Wade Stotts, and he kind of breaks down pretty quickly what Vivek did, which was the trivialization of American identity, and I think that that's a real kind of marker for why I think most people, and even in MAGA and might not even be MAGA, but just right wing in general, viewed and kind of took that kind of breakdown that Vivek had and that kind of fall from grace. And I think Wade Stotts is somebody people need to pay attention to. I've not seen a video from his where I was like, man, every time I walk away, I'm like, that was a really good, unique take. So yeah, shout out to Wade Stotts. And I think that's the direction that this country is moving, is regaining our identity of what it does mean to be an American and moving to a place where you feel pride in that. Moving away from this kind of like, oh, woe is me, this guilt for being an American, like, oh, woe is me. And then, obviously add on that like the white guilt too, right? And being like, America's just such this awful place. Like they treated black people so bad, and kind of like tunnel visioning on what America is and kind of reducing that away and being like, actually, America is like a pinnacle of innovation, and we are the apex point of what a society can reach. We are like the greatest society that really ever existed. And we have all these really negative flaws, don't get me wrong, but in the overall, you look at it and you go, hey, we're proud of all this. We're proud that we conquered and we colonized all of you individuals, because y'all were putting people on 1,000-foot stairs and ripping their hearts out. Like we put boots on the ground here, conquered this ground here. We put men on the moon, which I think you could dispute, right? But we did all of these things, and these are all things to be proud of. And I think you got to get closer to that. And I think ultimately that it's inevitable at this point when you look at the younger generations too.
Well, we have that Wade Stotts breakdown of Vivek Ramaswamy if you want to play it. But first, if you do, Andrea asked, what do you think about Vivek being the governor of Ohio Atlas? I'm not completely sold on him. I worry he's a rhino.
I'm out on Vivek. Not to say like I couldn't get back in on Vivek. I mean, probably not. I'm completely out on Vivek. I don't want him to be governor of Ohio. I don't worry that he's a rhino as much as I worry that he is like just a simple snake oil salesman. I worry that he is someone who is entirely in for these things for himself. I do worry about his background as well. I worry about, what led to his, obviously the scam artistry of what he did with his product, with the pharmaceuticals, trying to sell a product that he knew was busted, and I think was taking money away from his mother even to like make it work in the first place. Um, but ultimately, Ohio specifically, when you look at it pragmatically, Ohio is a very purple state, and it's gotten more purple over time. And I fear that Ohio can kind of fall like Wisconsin, where Ohio may ultimately become like a blue state. And I think for the future of politics, when it comes to like the electorate, right? Um, I think that's a net negative for like how elections could go. And so I think when I think about it pragmatically, it's like if I have my choice between like Vivek or some kind of, cut of the cloth regular Democrat, it's like I kind of just fall back to the incrementalism argument where it's like, I guess like he's not perfect and I don't even think he's a good candidate, but if I'm looking at the lesser of two evils, that's kind of the route that I would go at. Um, but I think that's ultimately the path we're on anyways. And I don't really see any kind of challenger coming at Vivek that would even be on his level for Ohio. I mean, it's really going to come down to like DeWine versus Ohio. I think ultimately it'll be like the namesake, the household name versus Vivek. We'll see how that plays out. But no, I'm not sold on him on any regard. And I think he's basically been doing a lot of PR since those comments on Christmas.
Right.
We've been trying to get his image back to where he had it previously.
It damaged him for sure. Andrew followed up and said, I don't trust him either. Jay, there is something about him I don't like. I can't put my finger on it. Well, I can tell you what you probably don't like is that he speaks, his cadence is exactly like Barack Obama. And that is a turnoff for me. The other thing is that he's not a Christian. He says he stands with Christians. But those are the two, things. The second one, not being a Christian, is more important to me than the fact that he talks with the same cadence that Obama does. But the fact remains, that's who he reminds me of. And he's even been quoted, just like repeating an Obama quote, which it worked for Obama. So I think that was maybe Vivek growing up with Obama being president, saying this is presidential. I'll model myself after this person potentially.
Yeah.
And even use effective quotes that Obama used. But, it's one of those things where Just Me mentions, and I think this was actually a good point. She says, I'd like to see Vivek as governor of Ohio 100%. Then we can really gauge where he's at as far as moving forward for him being a presidential candidate. And that would actually be a good, scale, I guess. But at the same time, I've said multiple times that Vivek needs to maintain his consistency that he had, the status quo that he established during Trump's campaign and Vivek's own campaign in his America First type principles and policies, and his disconnect from Americans, which TNT brought up that he wasn't really that wrong. I mean, we do have huge issues with young men and women in our country right now. His way of going about it and saying it was, I think, one of the reasons why people responded so harshly, or the fact that he said it in the first place. But my main thing is, like I said, he just doesn't come from that Christian perspective. So
it would be like Cash Patel, right? He gets sworn in after he wins the governorship from Ohio, and he's like, do you have a copy of the Bhagavad Gita so I can swear on that? And he does the same thing too, right? When he puts out like the 10 things America needs to hear, right? And he always does those appeals to God, but he always tries to hide the fact, or at least like be avoidant of the fact that like, yeah, he's not Christian by any regards. And so it's like it goes back to this again, like the overall kind of subversion of like the Christianity, right? It's like, we kind of worship the same God, right, guys? And he's like looking nervously around, like, no, we don't, like we don't at all, like in any sense of the word. And again, it goes back to the same thing, which is like, I don't even have an expectation that Vivek would uphold Christian values. He is somebody who would take the looser definitions of things like religious freedoms and such, which I reject outright. And someone who I also don't agree with much, but I think I would prefer to Vivek, was someone like Charlie Kirk, who would also heavily disagree with what Vivek's interpretations are of religious freedoms. And so on those, on those 100%. But Ohio is very far away from being like in Oklahoma. You know, there's very, very, very little, you know, Christian leadership inside of Ohio right now, at least in terms of like name, you know, household, you know, value that people can kind of recognize on a basis like that, just non-existent at all.
Andrea says, Atlas, run for governor of Ohio, please. LOL.
I would get missing personed probably so fast if I tried to do anything political. But yeah, it's a good thought. I appreciate the sentiment. But yeah, I would. I have a daughter to take care of, unfortunately. Maybe she gets a little bit older and my wife can handle it. If I get missing personed, then maybe I'll think about it.
That's funny. You guys, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Share this with everybody that you know, of course. Let's see here. So we got
well, yeah, I wanted to, if you had that video, that Wade's Thoughts video while we're
let's play it. You're gonna have to mute yourself, or not mute yourself, fine. But yeah, let me pull up the share screen. We'll put that on.
I'm ready.
Okay. There we go. And I'll just let her rip. This is 6 minutes long, but you know, if we need to pause it, just let me know or whatever.
Yeah.
Batman, Jason Bourne, me. What do we all have in common besides our capacity for violent heroism? That's right, we all have multi-layered identities. But today I want to talk about American identity. That's the topic of a recent debate between Fox News' Will Cain and candidate for Ohio Governor Vivek Ramaswamy. Seen here about to herd some sacred cattle. Vivek talks pretty fast and in a way that's built around applause lines. But I want to see if we can boil it down to the bare propositions. Wish me luck. We'll start it off by asking the key question.
What does it mean then to be an American?
Here's the first part of Vivek's answer.
I think it is an ethos, a creed, the basic idea that no matter who you are or where your parents came from or what your skin color is, that you get ahead in this country with your own hard work and commitment and dedication, and that you're free to speak your mind at every step of the way. We are the nation on God's green earth where you get to realize the maximum of those God-given gifts without anybody, not a government, not a bureaucracy standing in your way. That's the set of ideals that makes America itself.
It's a little hard to summarize, but here goes. An American is someone who believes that anyone who comes here and works hard enough can be successful, okay? And here's part two.
The thing that's different about America versus other countries, you or I could go to France and live there. We would never be a Frenchman. We could go to Germany, we would never be a German. Italy, and we'd never be an Italian. Japan, and we'd never be Japanese. We could go to China or India, and we'd never be Chinese or Indian, actually. But we could both be here, or people from every one of those countries could come here and still be an American.
So the second thing that's unique about America is that people from any country can come here and become one of us. That's what
makes America itself.
So in short, though Vivek would never be so bald about it, America is what it is because it has so many great opportunities for foreigners. Again, I'm just trying to summarize. The problem is that by that definition, America wasn't itself until 1965, after the passage of the Hart-Celler Immigration Act and after we'd become the world's leading economic superpower. Big immigration and big opportunities. Sure, they settled Jamestown in 1607, but it really became America about the time my parents were born. And now that America is America, how does someone join? In other words,
how do you become American? I think that every high school senior who graduates from high school right here should have to pass, as a condition for graduation from high school, the same civics test required of every legal immigrant to this country. So should we require a foreigner who comes to this country to speak English, speak it fluently, know about the history of the country, know about our Constitution, know about our founding, know how many branches of government there are? You're darn right we should.
To be fair, at least the logic is consistent. If America is an idea, then becoming an American means learning all the ideas. The problem is that this turns assimilation into a sort of trivia contest, reducing American culture to being really good at school. And in case you think I'm overstating it,
we also have to retain and preserve a culture to assimilate into.
Yes.
And we're not heading the right direction, Will, if our own kids, 85% of kids who graduate from high school, can't answer those same questions. We've gone too much to a participation trophy culture rather than a championship trophy culture. I think that's the essence of America's. We're founded on exceptionalism.
For Vivek, the center of American culture is hard work, specifically academic work. But there's one problem.
A kid in China right now is 40 years ahead of a kid in the United States.
So by his definition of American culture, China is more American than America is. And a Chinese kid who can speak English and watches Schoolhouse Rock is practically George Washington. Will pushes back by saying that America is a people, and it's defined by its culture and history, not just ideas and hard work. Vivek's attitude is, yeah, it's a people, but what really separates it from the rest is we have the best ideas, the best opportunities, we're good at school, and we're open to immigrants. So that's his vision of American identity. But the most interesting aspect of his definition is what he leaves out of it. To define ourselves by our openness to outsiders is to define ourselves away, to define a house by describing the front door. 4 years ago, I moved to Moscow, Idaho. Imagine if I talked to someone who's been here for 50 years and said, you know, there are a lot of places out there, but what makes this town unique is that I can move here and get a good job. That may be the best part for me, but it's not what makes it what it is. Will's right that the question of American identity is the question of our time, and we're not the first people to ask it. Russell Kirk and Samuel Huntington have written whole books about it. But one key element is that America is distinctly Western. Specifically, it was created by a bunch of English Protestants. People who are not English Protestants came here, but they came into an English Protestant project. And even then, there are key differences between the kind of people who left England and the kind of people who stayed. The whole European mind meme is true. There are certain things unique to Americans. But the core goes back to England. The settlers defined and the immigrants joined. Anytime I talk about America's British culture, I always go back to the great clip of Justice Scalia, saying that as an American of Italian heritage, the first time he visited England,
I felt at home.
Now, there's no guarantee that Scalia would feel the same way about England today. But if an Italian Catholic can say this, as can Yoram Hazony, why can't Vivek? There's a lot to say here, but the bottom line for now is that we are not just an opportunity mill. We are more than our ideas and more than our economy. As I watched this clip from Vivek, I couldn't help but think of this David Mamet quote. People may or may not say what they mean, but they always say something designed to get what they want. I can't read Vivek's mind, but I can speculate as to why he wouldn't want to lean too heavy into history, heritage, and religion when talking about American identity on the campaign trail. Defining America is like trying to define your mom. You may not have a ready definition, but you know when someone's got it wrong, or if they've left out something important. The topic isn't going away, and Vivek is going to have to address it more and more in the race for governor. But if that doesn't work out, at least he can have his
Participation trophy.
Here, let me take that down, and you should be good.
All right, I'm out of the timeout corner. I mean, Wade nails it, right? That was a very concise, just breakdown, just using, one of his recent appearances as Will Kane,
Very quick.
talking about it, right? It's the American identity. Now, I think this, alongside the question of what is America, also in terms of that was kind of like what is America in its like domestic sense of identity. We also are going to have to answer the question of what is America on its external and international identity as well, which is kind of what Evo Elmo had alluded to a couple episodes ago. Maybe it's the last one, I can't remember, about how we're going to have to answer that question of like, are we going to continue to be the American empire, the world police? What is going to be our identity? And especially when you look at, say we do use historical reference, right? We look at heritage as well as tradition, and you look at all of the warnings that we got from the ones who defined what America was, which were those English Protestants, which were people like George Washington's. They said very obviously and overtly, do not get involved in foreign entanglements. It was clear that by the defining of what they wanted for America, they wanted this country to be a very isolationist country. They wanted not to get involved with other countries' affairs. They wanted to be independent to its truest sense. And that means things like energy independence, manufacturing independence, being entirely able to be a country in and of itself without having to resort and rely on anyone else outside of the maybe minor kind of trade benefits you could get, and not whole on having to completely depend or rely on other countries to source very, very basic necessities that you would need, similar to how we got in our country now currently with like China and like with pharmaceuticals, right? I think Sean Ryan recently tweeted that America would last 2 weeks if, trade broke down completely with China, and we lost all this access to those pharmaceuticals, as well as the other smaller, the things that make up the pharmaceuticals, which have a specific name. They're like nicotoids or something like that. And yeah, it's spot on. And I think that will ultimately be what defines Vivek's campaign trail if he does choose to continue on that path, which is he's going to continually be asked, what is it to be an American? And I think the longer that he continues to resort to what he said to Will Cain, the more that he's not going to have the heart of the MAGA base with him. They're going to kind of walk away from it. They say, hey, no, like, I don't agree that we are defined with how Wade said. We're defined by what our front door can do. We're defined by the people who actually made the country and the people who were there, who lived it, bled for it, died for it, versus, who can come in the door, and how our immigration policy is. Like, it's more about the guys who built it, pioneered it, and betrayed their own family members for it, than it is about, what they said about who's allowed to join it now that we've kind of defined the rules. And I think he's pretty spot on there. And I think ultimately, in the end, that's why Vivek probably will not be able to win a presidency under the Republican ticket unless he changes, course on what defines an American to him.
Yeah. I mean, my main thing is the dude, I don't think considers the Christian aspect at all on anything when he comes from. It's just a business mind. And that's just not the way the forefathers intended it. So I have a barrier that I have to get past just in that aspect when it comes to supporting Vivek. Although I like a lot of the stuff that he says, and he's not wrong about some of the stuff that he was even claiming there, but it's just I don't know. Yeah, he's new to the scene still to me, and he's got a lot to prove, and I don't know if he's going to get it done the next 3 years to make himself a relevant presidential candidate.
Right. Well, I mean, if his point, right, if you say there's truth to his point, which I actually disagree entirely, right? Like, yeah, China has better academics than us, but they're not America. Their kids are, all they do is they're focused on passing the next math test, and kids will get beat if they don't get 100 in straight A's. And like,
well, they're also required to learn a second language, English, and all kinds of stuff. I mean, that's been going on since the 90s, maybe even longer. But
right, and not for a second would I trade my life, to be born as a Chinese person.
Right.
So if we're using that as like the metric for why America's failing, is because we're not like China enough, right? We're not entirely focused entirely on academics and education. I think he's just missing the mark completely. I think that what America needs is a spiritual healing, not a academic or educational healing. I think even if people were just as retarded, but they were more Christian, I think you would see a lot of great changes in America. If we kind of moved away from this kind of secular atheism that most people kind of adopt, yeah, I think we would see a lot more positive changes just based on Christian values being the prominent, ringleader for what's going to be the prominent thing we push for as American ideals to heal the country, versus kids getting a stronger, very secular education. Is like, I think it's clear to me, kind of the same way that you can't just put money into a bucket and expect things just get better, right? It's like, well, what the Democrats do. We're not funding it enough, so just dump more money into it. It doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, it matters ultimately like what lays the foundation for the morals of the people. I ultimately don't think that, like with Carmelo Anthony, that had he known at a greater level like what the historical context, and what the price of tea is in China, would have made a difference on whether he would have stabbed Austin Metcalf. I think what have made the difference was, would he have a stronger Christian upbringing? Would he have stabbed Austin Metcalf? And I think with those, I would say if he had a stronger, more rigid alignment with the Christian faith, he probably would have never even thought at all to even bring a knife to the school, let alone stab Austin in the chest.
Right.
I think it's less about what the education is. And I think that's what Vivek ultimately misses.
Oh yeah, he definitely misses that. But where he's talking about like the immigrant coming here and having a basic high school diploma. Well, not them having a high school diploma. He kind of said it backwards, actually. I feel like if you want to come here as an immigrant, you should probably be able to complete a senior year of high school equivalent, right?
Right.
And then to that same point, like we've talked about, you know, having skin in the game or a certain knowledge base to actually be able to vote. And it's unfortunate. I can't remember who said it, but somebody called out that the high school education, the curriculum is part of the problem as well. And they stopped teaching, you know, some of the civic stuff and everything. So you can't even get the education if they're not offering it. But
Right.
it would be nice if they offered enough information in that senior year to make you a qualified voter. At the same time, folks coming into our country, immigrating, be able to have that same type of level of knowledge as that senior in high school.
Yeah.
And then that be like the base, the ground floor, like baseline that we grow off of or whatever. It's you know, that could maybe be a way forward to thinning out the voting herd. You don't want people that, you know, just idiots out there voting, but I don't know.
Right. Well, I mean,
Until
to
then,
me, well, I was just gonna say, I'm sorry I cut you off, but like to
you're
me,
good.
when I think about it too, like, there's not a part of you that like is a little like upset over the fact that like someone could come here, take a civics test, and be just as American as you when your family's been here for how many generations? I mean, does
I
that
mean,
like
kind
not
of, but
bother
not
you?
really. Kind of, but not really. Because I looked it up the other day, and it's estimated 60 to 70% of Americans living in America today uh, came here. Their family came here, or they descended from somebody that came here post 1865, which I think is 1865, which is when we abolished slavery. So, like the majority of the people that live here since then, the majority of people in America have moved here, integrated here, like post that era. And
Right.
so, I mean, we're all not that far. I've seen it in chat, two, 3 generations. Um, you know what I mean? So no, it doesn't bother me if people come here legally and, you know, follow the laws and genuinely look, my best friend growing up was an anchor baby. And his dad was from Iran, very hardworking American. Yeah, he kind of hung out with his buddies that he came over here with. He kind of had like this core of dudes, but that we'd go and party and hang out with and stuff. And you'd hear him talking in Farsi to, I think it's Farsi, to his friends on the phone and stuff like that. But the dude
Yep.
came here. He married a woman. He had a child who was my best friend growing up. I mean, like, first house I've ever stayed the night at in like kindergarten was this dude's house. That his dad, the guy that immigrated here, he stayed married until the woman died within the last 10 years. So I mean, we're talking over 30 years they were together. The guy had a flooring business, you know, wood flooring business, and worked super hard, made a nice living for himself, his family. His wife was a stay-at-home mom. I mean, she was the one that uh, took us everywhere we wanted to go when we were kids. That was her role. Like, she didn't have any job other than that. And so, people that immigrate here, the right way, I don't have any problem with them coming here and having an immediate right. But, well, I say immediate. I do have a problem with them coming here and having maybe an immediate right. If they pass like a civics test, that's one thing. But I've actually had this stance before in the past, and I still do stand by this when it comes to them being able to vote. First off, an American citizen that was born here has to live here for 18 years before they could vote for the first time, and sometimes 21 years, just depending on how it falls in the 4-year, you know, election term, right?
Yeah.
And so, we'll say the first 10 of those years, we'll even call it 12 of those years. The person was growing up in the culture, but like also just learning life skills, basics. But then maybe from year 12 to 18, there's a 6-year period that they start looking at the world, right? And so then they start maybe looking at politics and seeing how things affect them politically. So then they have this like political education that lasts roughly 6 years. If you want to say it starts when you're 14, then we'll call it 4 years. People that move to this country should have some type of time in the country type of experience similar to what an American-born voter has as it relates to political knowledge and world knowledge and things like that, right? And so, like I said, we're here for 18 to 21 years. Maybe the last 4 of those years we start paying attention to politics a little bit more. So then we at least got this 4-year education of politics before we start voting. And I think that would be a fair way to understand, like, to allow people who weren't born here to eventually vote here. You got to live here. You got to experience the culture. You got to be a part of it. You got to have a driver's license, or, you know what I mean? Like, maybe you're a senior and you don't drive. But for the most part, you got to be here and have lived it and experienced it at least for 4 years before you should be able to have the right to and experience to vote. And I think that should also come with some type of civics test that I think we all should have when it, to understand voting. But it's also one of those things where it's like voting 8 years ago is completely separate and different from voting in this last election. So it's like you need a continuing education to maintain your voter card, right? Just to make sure that you didn't just go completely off base and off the map and you're just popping up to vote, whatever,
Right. Well, so the reason why I'm completely against it at all right now is, so Texas banned Sharia law. I mean, they had to put forward legislation to ban Sharia law in Texas a couple weeks ago. And why is that? Right. The reason is because we actually don't have any kind of assimilation programs at all. We don't have any program that says, hey, this is it. You are in a white Western European Protestant land. Here's what you need to do to assimilate. And so my issue with that is what we're seeing and what we have been seeing for quite some time is that there actually is no push to assimilate at all. So it really doesn't matter if someone was here for 18 years, if they lived in Chinatown the whole time, never learned a lick of English and speak Vietnamese their whole life.
Oh, yeah. I've been in court with ladies like that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I've been in court with ladies that literally, I'm going to derail you for a second because this is crazy. It blew my mind that this happened, right? And this happened in Kansas City before I actually moved down to Florida. I went to court because, all right, this is a story, but stick with me. Okay. I had this moped I bought off this college kid, and I wanted to ride it around town. And like I had a cousin that I hung out with. It was like 3 blocks away, and I was like, yeah, just get this little moped for a few $100, and I'll just drive it around, and it'll be cool, old moped, whatever, right? And I left it parked for too long, and I couldn't get it started. And so it had like a key start and it had a kick start. And one day on a Sunday, I was out there trying to get this fucking thing going. And so I'm kickstarting. I've had a couple beers throughout the day. It's like Sunday night, and this thing finally starts. So I jump on it and I immediately drive it around like you're supposed to, right? You're supposed to, clear the carburetor. Keep it live. Keep it going and put some sea foam through it or something like that to clean your carburetor, to condition your fuel and everything. And moped. I know. I asked for that, didn't I, Tix? Yeah.
Very accurate.
It was called a Zuma. It was actually a fast little Yamaha Zuma or something like that. It was kind of cool. But that's relevant, right? So I jumped on the moped. I went down my street. I turned right. I went past one street to a stop sign, and it's dark. And I turned right, and at the stop sign, there was a car opposite me facing me. I didn't know what it was. All I saw was headlights, right? I turned right, and it's 35, and I just go down, and I'm going to turn right at the next right, and I'm basically going to just do a square back to my house.
Right.
Like that's it. I'm just going to do this square. Well, the car that was facing me was a cop. He pulls me over, tells me I got a souped up moped, which was all just bullshit. And I had to go to court because I didn't have my license on me. I didn't have my wallet on me. I just got it started. I jumped on the moped and drove it around the block. He pulled me over because I didn't have glasses on, which I thought was stupid. But since I didn't have my ID or proof of insurance, which I had it all. I mean, check this. The insurance for the year costs $90, right? And so I go to court and have to prove I have a driver's license and I have to prove that I have insurance. And it's a non-negotiable fine. I have to pay $150, which was more than what the insurance cost in the first place, which is what I had. Okay, so then while I'm in court, I'm sitting there, and all of these cases are like DUI, driving on suspended, like every single one. I'm just waiting through them. And there's this lady in front of me, and she was probably in her 60s, and she was Hispanic, and she had 2 teenage daughters with her. One was probably like 19 or 20, and the other one was probably like 16, and they're both sitting with her, and they're translating for her, right? And I'm like, dang, okay, whatever. So this lady gets called up to the judge, and the judge is running the same like line of questioning to these people. He's like, can you get a license within 30 days? You have insurance? Are you this and that? And this lady's like, yeah, I can get a license within 30 days. And this dude just like, he's pissed off at this point. Like, you could just tell the judge is like at his wit's end.
Right.
And mind you, she's speaking through the translator. She doesn't speak English. So the judge finds out that she's been in our country for 20 years. She can get a license per what she says within 30 days, yet she hasn't got a license in 20 years. And the judge is just like, he throws his hands up in there, literally like, are you even an American citizen? Like, the look on her face, and the 2 daughters that were sitting in front of me, like, they all shit their pants like at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And
he did a racism.
right. You probably can't even ask nowadays in court, because this was like probably 12 years ago. And
this was 12 years ago.
Yes. This was before I moved to Florida, and I've been in Florida for like 9 to 10 years. Yeah, dude.
Okay.
And
it's been going on for a lot longer than we realized then.
Yes. And so the point was that this lady's been here for all this time, has not even made one attempt to learn the language or get a driver's license in over 20 years. There is no assimilation attempt by this person who had raised at least 2 kids since she's been here. Right. And I felt like the judge, you know what I mean? It's just like, what the hell's going on? And check this out. This was like 2 people after an Asian speaking dude got caught up there, but they didn't have a translator for the Asian guy, but they had a translator for the Hispanic speaking people, and which I just found ironic. It's just like the icing on the cake that we're very obviously expediting and catering to this certain type of people. And it's not to benefit them, it's to benefit the court system. It's at the American people's expense. And they didn't even have the translator for everybody. You know what I'm saying? It was just the whole show. And the judge, whenever I went up there, and this just to finish it off, right? He's like, what are you here for? And I told him I rode my moped around the block, didn't grab my license because I had been working on getting it started all day. So I just jumped on it, rode it around the block, and I didn't have my insurance with me. He's like, you got the proof of insurance? Yeah, here it is. He's like, okay, well, he like takes a deep breath and he's like, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. It's the city law. If you're driving without your proof of insurance, you have to pay the fine. It's non-negotiable, $150. You pay the clerk out there. Like, this dude, he's been like letting people off all day with like driving on suspendeds and all this shit. And then here I come and it's just like, why are you in my courtroom? Like, who is the cop that did this to you? Like, you know what I mean? You can just feel it. It was really funny. But yeah, they've been doing this for a long time. There's no attempt at, assimilation. And we've seen that. And I've told the story about my friend who had younger daughters, went through grade school that had paras in their classrooms. Spanish speaking paras, teaching in Spanish over the classroom teacher. It's not an attempt at assimilation. It's just to create bigger government too. And all these jobs are bigger government jobs. We need more judges to facilitate the deportation process now. We need more judges to We need, teachers and whatever it's all facilitating and catering to. It's not really even trying to enforce any type of assimilation. So we're just not going to get it. It's not coming from the culture. It's not coming from the law system. Nothing. It's just
Right.
come here and be who you are. And the American culture, if we have any left, is rapidly reducing and nearly gone. Like I said.
Right. That's why,
Yeah,
the emphasis there on the identity of what America is, right? And that's why I think it's, if the longer that we keep up this idea that America is just like you can believe whatever the hell you want to believe and you can do whatever you want, I mean, you're never going to get anything done or good or any kind of real sustainable way of life when you have 19 different smaller demographic factions all arguing that their interests need to be served over the others. It's a situation we're in right now. And I think ultimately people are going to have to decide, right? Are we a Christian nation, or are we a you can believe in whatever the heck you want to nation? And for me, obviously, I've answered that question myself. Like I think we are you. That is funny. We are a Christian nation, and that's why the assimilation can't just be like, do you know what the laws are? The assimilation also needs to be, what does America believe?
Mm-hmm.
America believes that Jesus Christ is King of King and Lord of Lords, and like that needs to be what gets uttered there too. And you have and also it helps avoid the immigration problem in the first place, right? Because if these hardcore Muslims and any other religion, all these like demon worshippers and Hindus, they're told, right, if you want to be an American, it's like, yep, we got to make sure that you go to church every single Sunday for the first 4 years you're here. When people would do it, they'd never come over here. So that's the kind of stuff that we got to push for, right? And we want to homogenize the culture. You want to get to a place where you wonder why, Sweden and Denmark and all these others extremely homogenized white nations have all of these healthcare programs and this. Well, part of it is because the U.S. pays for their defense budget, but um, you would have to decide at the top of the top, what is America? Is America a hodgepodge of whatever the F anybody wants? Or is it a Christian nation and we want to aspire towards those values? And for me, that is the answer. And so I think anything that doesn't speak towards that as a policy, I'm not going to get behind.
Right. Yeah. Just the problem is that's got to be the end goal, right? We got to be able to pick and choose our battles that are going to lead us to that end goal. Unfortunately, that means sometimes electing people that don't get the job done right away, but maybe set us on course. And that's what we're hoping for with Donald Trump. His predecessor in 2028 is going to be a make or break presidential candidacy for our country. Because if it goes back to the Democrats so soon, every bit of progress that Trump makes, that we make, will be gone that fast. So we really need, we've had 12 of the last 16 years under Democrat leadership. Look what it's got us. I'm really hoping that 12 of the next 16 years are under a Republican, if not 16 of the next 16 years are under a non-Democrat leadership. I don't know.
Right.
There's no better candidate right now to oppose, party to oppose the Democrats. So we just got to say Republican. But it's just, we need the time, and we need to set that goal too for the country. And, that only comes through political pressure from Christians and Christianity and churches. And
Right.
people need to be making their voices heard that, look, we like Vivek, we like cash, but the one thing that they don't have is the most important ingredient, which is that Christian base. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the more people we get that aren't just fake, Biden was a Catholic, right? Pelosi's a Catholic.
Yeah.
These people are posers. They're not real Christians by any mean. And I'm not God, so I can't judge their heart or their soul. But I can judge the fruit from their tree. And all of that fruit is rotten and stinky and, full of greed. And so, getting back to, Christianity is also an America First type agenda, in my opinion, because greed and Christianity aren't really two things that mix, right?
Right.
Not supposed to, at least.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And as always, right, politics is downstream from culture. So the larger battle will have to be had, in the public view. That's why I think it's, very important to kind of follow along with a lot of the debates that are happening, especially among the, right winger versus libertarian, or better yet, conservative, Con Inc. versus, banned right winger. I think most are more the conversation people are going to be paying attention to. I think it's part of the reason why you see individuals like also like Corey Mahler, who's a part of the Stone Choir podcast, also kind of blowing up too, just taking debates left and right. And it's crazy because this is a guy who's like gets banned off of X like literally once every like 2 days for something that he said on there. And then you see him go take on like, Michael Rechtenwald, or who's the other guy, like EMJ, just taking on all these guys, and it's just absolutely obliterating them in like all these debates, especially over like Christian ethics. And like, it's wild because the more I listen to those guys, the more you learn from them. And it's like, that's insane. Like things you don't even think about. And it's, again, all these guys who have, because of the way that the left has been, we're so far right wing that, they as a society and the gatekeepers of the left wing media spaces said these guys' ideas, they're too dangerous. We can't let them exist. And so they get banned. And then when X gets full brought out and full free speech, these people come back into this fear. And then you start seeing them like slaughter people like Charlie Kirk and others who have been like the mainstream kind of, giants in the space. It's just a wild thing to watch. And so I think that's where we're going to be watching most of the battling happening. I think it's already happening right now between like, the neocon department with like the Douglas Murray and the Dave Smith thing, right? You have a lot of part of the mega base who is aligned with Dave Smith, and you also have another portion of the mega base that's aligned with Douglas Murray. And you're seeing those ideas get hashed out as well. And that's the direction we got to keep it, right? Just keep the left wing in the rearview mirror. We're never going to revisit it. Don't give them any kind of, credence or ethos to their arguments, and just keep pushing. And that's the direction we're going. And so we're probably going to see a lot more of like, Ben Shapiro's and Matt Walsh's and Michael Knowles taking on debates with people you probably may never even have heard of. And,
Right.
And like, I hope that's the direction that we go, because that's ultimately what I want to see.
Right. And then I was gonna say too, oh dang it. It was right there. It was on the tip of my tongue. Dang, it was to your point there, and I'm totally drawing a blank now. I was looking ahead to see what else we had to cover.
Oh, you reminded me. In white, make this country white. If it ain't white, it ain't right. That's
let's see. Dang it, I was distracted with chat talking about Deadwood. I love that show. It's a good one.
that last comment from Tix got me really good. That's funny. You like that on the tip, don't you? That's funny.
That's funny right there.
Hold on, I think I might. Okay, my wife is spamming me up.
Oh, okay. You need to jump off?
Yeah,
that's all good. We ran long.
Jay Dyer and Wilson are probably the best two leaders out there. And one thing I would encourage people to look into if they are interested in the ongoing infighting of the Christian community. Apparently some bad blood developed between Jay Dyer and Sam Shamoon. I think Sam Shamoon recently made a transition to like Roman Catholicism. Jay Dyer, who previously was partnering with Sam Shamoon, taking on Muslims in debates. Now there's like bad blood going on in there. But I mean, that's where I see a lot of the energy going too. Like, looks like there's a lot of prominent guys coming out of like this Christian space, like the Jay Dyers, who now works for InfoWars, like Andrew Wilson, who's making huge waves, getting invited to Piers Morgan all the time. Like, that's where you're going to start to see a lot more of like guys who start entering into the big stage on the right wing side of things are going to be brothers who are coming out of that group. Same thing with like Joel Webbin as well. He's getting more prominent, getting in like, having all these kind of viral takes where he's quoting like women. Like the recent one that got me good was Hillary Crowder made a comment about him, and then he just quoted her and he said, "How's your marriage?" I mean, it's like, I mean, he's coming out and he's doing like the Trumpian type things, right? Where he's just like I don't even care who gets offended and clutches their pearls. Like,
Oh, that
why
reminded
is
me.
someone who destroyed her marriage talk coming at me for? I'm a pastor, man. And it's crazy because it's like that energy, like, where has that energy been? Right? When would you ever have seen a pastor quote a woman who got divorced like that and said, yeah, your marriage didn't turn out too good, did it? Right? And so that's the kind of stuff I hope we see a lot more of and get proliferated forward. But
Right.
yeah, we got to take off. We got to make sure my daughter's not losing her mind. But
Okay,
yeah.
that's cool. Yeah, I was just gonna say, in response to what you said right there, which was a good point. I remember what I was gonna say is the proper response nowadays to these lefties that are with all their whataboutisms is I don't care. I don't care about that right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've had to use it more and more often lately in these debates about, well, what about, Ukraine, or what about insert Democrat agenda? And my answer is, if it's not focused on Americans from an America first perspective, I don't fucking care right now.
Right.
It's just as simple as that. And with that, I think we'll just go ahead and just wrap the show up. We did run a little bit longer than usual. It's Saturday night, so let everybody get back to what they were doing, and appreciate everybody for stopping in.
Yep.
See, everybody's
got
already
their
saying
coke that needs snorted, their meth that needs injected, and green that needs burnt.
Right.
Yeah, but thank you guys for being here. Christ is King. Ban woman, deport Kash Patel. Pam Bondi needs to get, at this point, handcuffed to a kitchen sink and never let out of a room again. That's kind of where we're at, guys. But I appreciate everybody for being here.
Yeah, I love you guys. You guys are great in chat. You guys have me cracking up. And as always, Christ is King. We'll see you guys on Monday.
Yeah. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, guys.
With war rolling and with thug, we here to bring the truth. Jar open this podcast, we breaking through the fake news. They try to silence us, but we will be subdued. We're bearded alpha males here to save the youth. Spitting fire on the mic with the bass, Christian takes. Exposing the lies, keeping the demons at bay. We ain't afraid to speak up, we won't be swayed. Jar open this podcast, where the truth is laid. Jar openers, cracking open the lies. We're rolling Atlas thug, we're here to rise. Bearded alpha males saving the youth from the godless demons, spreading the truth. We ain't playing games, we're on a mission to awaken the masses with our intuition. Pulling out the corruption with no inhibition. Jar open this podcast, sparking a revolution. We're not afraid to stand tall in a world full of deceit. We're the voice of reason, bringing light to the street, keeping it real, never missing a beat. Jar open this podcast, where the truth meets the heat. Jar openers, cracking open the lies. We're rolling Atlas thug, we're here to rise. Bearded alpha males saving the youth from the godless demons, spreading the truth. Jar open this podcast, where the truth will never cease. Join us on the journey to bring back peace. We're rolling Atlas thug, fearless in our release. Jar open this podcast, where the lies will decrease.